Just so everybody knows what Alan's doing, he's setting up the live stream. And he's going to take the link to the live stream and post it on the website. And that way, everybody who wants to be able to see the meeting can find the meeting and watch the meeting.
Sounds good. Alan, it does say we're now streaming live, so we're good to go
No, we
then.
just give,
Yeah,
no,
give
it's
me-
got to wait to give me time to get it
One
up
more
on
minute.
the website.
There's all
Gotta
kinds
get
of
it.
technical stuff.
Yeah, got to get it posted.
Gotcha.
Got to get it posted.
YouTube does not stabilize the URLs on these meetings. So every time we put a meeting, we have to get a new URL, a new link, and then post it on the website for people to check.
Of course.
Okay, now we're live to the public.
All right, proceed on, please, Miss Amy.
Fantastic. It's 10:01 a.m. We have established a quorum for the OT Advisory Committee for Louisiana State Board of Medical Examiners, December 10th, 2021. So we are going to start with our agenda. Let's see, let me share my screen. Oh,
Yeah, let me, I got you.
Okay.
Hold on one second.
I forgot to say that before we started.
Yeah. And I actually should put you on as a co-host when I join these meetings. So, all right, you're good.
All right. So we're going to share screen one. Okay, does everybody see that? It's the agenda up there.
Yes.
Yes,
All right,
ma'am.
super. All right, so what we're going to start with is our minutes from the previous meeting. Y'all have to bear with me because I just got these brand new screens and I'm trying to learn how to use all of them. Let's see. I'm going to start with our meeting minutes from, oh no, did I pull them down? Meeting minutes, I did send them previously to you guys for last month. I'm so sorry.
Amy, I would, oh wait, I'm not seconding it. What am I doing? I'm approving them.
Yeah, not yet, not yet. We got to do our meeting minutes from last month. Hang on just a second.
Amy, if you want us to help, we can pull it up on CloudShare.
Oh, yes, actually.
I can pull it.
Okay,
I
so
can
I'm
pull
gonna-
it up if you want. I can put it on the screen for you.
I apologize. I had it all there and
No
then now
problem.
it's
Give
not.
me a second.
So I'm
I'll
gonna
pull it
stop.
up.
Fine.
I'm going to share it, put it up for you. Just give me a second.
Thank you. Yeah, it's just the meeting minutes from so our last meeting, September, unfortunately, there was the hurricane that was coming through, one of the many that Louisiana
Alan,
has.
Excuse me for interrupting, Alan. When I gave you host, I didn't keep host, so I need to be
Okay.
able to share.
You are now co-host.
Thank you.
There you go.
We're going to get it right.
Yep, we'll get it.
So I had it somewhere. Let's see where it is. Okay. And I don't know why it's not show all. Okay, so this is the minutes right here.
Yes, sir.
Can y'all see that?
Yes.
Okay. So I'll scroll through these so everybody can take a quick look at it. And that was your minutes.
All right. Can I have a motion to accept, or does anybody have anything they want to add or change about those minutes?
Move to accept.
A
Okay.
second.
All right, that's Brenda motion to accept, and Ingrid, was that you that second?
Carolyn.
Carolyn, okay. All right. Leslie, you're doing the minutes, right?
Yeah.
Just double checking. Okay. All right. Well, so is any nays? Are all in favor to accept the meeting minutes? Any nays? All right, we accept the minutes from the June meeting. All right. Okay, so the next thing on our list is, and I'd love to go ahead and get him up here because a shout out to him. His daughter's getting married tomorrow, so we wanted to put him first on the agenda. So Randall offered, we're gonna let you kind of give us an update on the dry needling, and kind of go from there. The floor is all yours, sir.
Thank you so much for the opportunity to come and speak today. My kids are in competition. My son got married in April, and so not to be outdone, my daughter decided, well, let's do it in the same year.
He's broke, ladies and gentlemen. He's broke. That's what he's saying.
Yeah.
And everybody says, why are you so skinny? I'm like, I'm the guy that doesn't stress eat. I'm the guy that goes the opposite. So here I am. The last time I met with y'all, we were in the process of the AOTA Dry Needling Task Force of answering a list of questions from the Representative Assembly group that received our motion that had some questions that wanted to be answered. So I met numerous times with that group. I helped formulate those answers to the Representative Assembly for their September meeting. And we sent that motion over with recommendations to include occupational therapy and dry needling as a modality under the guise of occupational therapy, with the understanding that this is not part of necessarily an educational curriculum, other than the fact that it would be introduced that it's a modality that's out there. We determined that it's an advanced skill, and that with being an advanced skill, there should be postgraduate training that met whatever minimum standards our states implement or determine or define in order for us to be approved. With that being said, we sent that in September. They reviewed our answers to their questions, which one of the questions I saw that Dr. Van was going to have was about precautions. I did some research on that particularly. All of this information I've sent to Amy, and I'm happy that she could share this information from our questions that they had, that we answered, to our responses to those questions, and to things about education, things about precautions, things about how you handle even down to first aid and universal precautions, and things are all included in that recommendation. After reading that recommendation, the Representative Assembly did vote to approve occupational therapy, dry needling as a recognized modality. We determined that studies for both PT and OT are very similar with neuroanatomy, anatomy, physiology. We all take the same classes currently together, and that we agreed that we had the same foundation that they did in order to be competent in that. But we all did agree that this should be an advanced skill, and that it would fall back to the states to define what those minimum standards would be. Many states have already started doing that. Wisconsin and Mississippi are an example of a couple. Karen Neville with the AOTA is over government affairs and all of that, and she researches and checks that out. So as that changes, I'll continue to ask her what some of those definitions are. And she has sent some of those from, and Mississippi recently had theirs approved and defined. So that's where we were with the Representative Assembly. They said that they would update our PM&R, physical medicine and rehabilitation paper, hopefully by next fall at the latest. But they weren't going to go specifically into modalities anymore, because they don't want every time that a modality comes up, like a laser or this or that, they were going to be more generic in their response as to, yes, dry needling is a valid modality and it's going to fall back on the states, but they don't want to have to define every modality that comes down the thing. So they're going to say many modalities, and it's responsible to the practitioner in the state to make sure that they get the advanced knowledge that they need in order to practice those modalities and to be policed at the state level, which I agree with all of that. And this is all about consumer protection. And that's kind of where we're at. So They have agreed that OT and dry needling is a valid modality for OTs with proper training, which would be an advanced skill that would be learned after graduation and after completing the minimum requirements that will be established by each of the states individually. And we compared it to Sharps debridement. Not all states concluded that Sharps debridement is a valid practice in their states, but with wound care, a lot of occupational therapists and physical therapists do that as well. If you have any questions, I'm happy to try to answer those.
Randall, I know that one of the things after kind of talking with Dr. Van for a second about it yesterday or a little bit, one of the main concerns was who's going to manage any complication that happens from it, like, you know, if somebody's on a specific kind of medication or.
Right. And that really should be part of the education process to learn all the contraindications, considerations, and precautions. I feel that every education system for any modality we do should have that as part of their curriculum. And we should have a pre and post test to test that knowledge. We should also have first aid techniques in place. The biggest issues that can occur with this is bruising or bleeding. And we have to know the list of medications that when it's contraindicated so that we don't do that. Obviously, the most harsh and thing that can occur is if someone used improper technique, did not know what they were doing, they caused a pneumothorax. And that person would have to go immediately to the emergency room and see a pulmonologist. But that all should be part of the training. There should be pre-test, post-test tests, curriculums, and where people have lab instructors that they see that they can do these techniques correct, and then a post-test that they understand all of that.
Okay, and I'm sorry, one other question about that as well, though. Are you, okay, so the person is coming to you for occupational therapy and you are utilizing dry needling as a technique, or I'm sorry, as a modality. Do they need a specific order, or do we think that they would need a specific order from the physician that definitely states dry needling, so that way everybody is aware of everything that's going on with your treatment and what is, you know, specific to it for that? Or
for us, the protection of the individual practitioner, I think that's always a good idea to have it written specifically on the order. Sometimes we receive orders that say evaluate and treat, but that's where we should pick up the phone and we should call the doctor and make sure that that's okay with them prior to us using that with that particular patient. We also should do education with the patient, explain to them all the contraindications, considerations and complications that can occur, and let them sign off that they're willing to do this before we ever do it. We're just not going to do it without any kind of approval from the doctor or the patient. Obviously, that's the best practice.
okay, all right. And let's see, let me make sure I have all my things that I needed to answer. Okay, so one of the questions was about would they ever add it to the core curriculum of what an OT learns, but you did touch on that, and it is in the paper that I sent, as well as I can share it. I think I might actually have that one to share. But it did state in there that you guys really just, I mean, this is not an entry level position, so entry level skill, this is something you have to go and consistently be or more certified in, and make sure that you have much more knowledge than just what the basic OT coming out of OT school has. And I know we've previously agreed this is not something for a CODA. This is not for an OT assistant. This is only for OTs because we have the specific knowledge of neuroanatomy, et cetera, physiology and things like that, correct?
Correct.
Okay, and let's see. Oh, yes, I see you only for OT, not CODA.
Dr. Collada is raising his finger.
Hand, finger, whatever. I'd like to ask a question. I think you made an excellent point about consents. What I would love to see you all do as we work through this process, and I would like to be one of the earlier state adapters. I can't promise what the board's going to want to do, but I think one of the things that would give the board a lot of comfort is if you all would go to the LDH's risk management panel, there's a system in the state where LDH operates a committee that has the defined complications that should be noted in any procedure. And you could then get a statutory protection for the consent so that somebody can say, well, you didn't tell me this. Well, I'm only required to tell you that. And so the key here would be, obviously, if you're doing it on a hand, you're going to be looking for things like aberrant vessels. If you're going to be looking at the, chest wall, you're going to be worried about penetration deeper. So I think the key is if you guys could, as an organization, go through LOTA or whatever you want to do. I mean, I'll support you, I'll help you, but I really think it needs to be the OTACs that go to the state's material risk panel board and ask them to design and approve a consent for dry needling. And I think if you guys take the lead, you will be setting the standard for everybody else, because at the present time, nobody that's doing dry needling has that consent that I could find. Now, maybe I made a mistake, and if you want to set up the meeting later on, as we get through this process, I'll work with you to get to the right people at LDH and help you. But the thing is that if you all make this up and get this going early on, I think the board is going to be very supportive, or much more supportive, of the idea of you all doing it, because you're going to be setting the defined parameters, the consents, and all of the things that we're talking about. And I'm happy to present it. And I would also like your assistance in getting information from what Mississippi is doing, because that'll weigh heavily, as there's not a lot of states that are doing it. But if Mississippi's doing it and Louisiana is doing it, we can show that we're making some headway that's trying to bring our states up in terms of healthcare and not be at the bottom of some things always. So I appreciate your comments.
Dr. Van, can you let me share again? Can I, or do I have that ability?
Share what?
I wanted to show you, he gave us some, and I think I sent it to you. He gave us where all of the states and kind of what they're doing.
Yes, I have that document. I'll put it up. Give me a second. Let me
Okay.
get that up for you.
Okay, yeah.
Can I ask a question? Dr. Van, just trying to keep track of it. What is the name of specifically of the committee, the material
Risk Panel.
risk panel? Thank you.
Yeah. Hang on a second. Let me see if I can. I
Do
think I
you
had
have
that open earlier.
Do you know
Just
who's
give me
in
a second.
charge of that or anything? Like
LDH actually runs that, believe it or
Okay.
not.
Material Risk Management Panel.
Material Risk Panel.
When I completed the course, they gave us a consent form years ago that we were supposed to give to our patients prior to anything. And PT board in Louisiana originally required that all patients sign that. Now, Louisiana, as far as the PT board, now has a thing where you can document everything where it's a form letter and it's kind of signed online versus signed off that the therapist reviewed this with the patient prior to completing the thing, and they don't have a formal piece of paper trying to go more paperless. So there is examples out there already that we can utilize as well that has a lot of that specific information in there already, and I can help get that.
And like I said, I'm happy to help facilitate all of that. I think the key here is that one is done by the PT board, and one would be done by the PT board may or may not have the force of law that one that's done through the material risk panel would have. One is, I think one gives you better protections from a liability perspective, okay? I don't know that it's a better consent, and I won't even begin to go to the quality of the consent because I'm not interested in the quality of the consent. I'm trying to tell you what the way the laws and rules around medical professional liability work. I mean, let me ask you this. Do you all carry professional liability insurance, and do you buy it with a rider from the state for the Patients Compensation Fund Oversight Board?
At Baton Rouge Orthopedic Clinic where I work, we are self-insured, but I have my own individual policy on the side just for my own protection because I teach classes and stuff, and I thought it would be good for me to be insured separately. But because we are self-insured, we do not contribute to that fund at Baton Rouge Orthopedic Clinic.
I would say you probably misunderstood them. They contribute to the patient's compensation fund because they want the excess limits of protection over
Okay.
the self-insurance of the $100,000.
Maybe so, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I know those people pretty well, and I can tell you they contribute to the fund.
Yes,
But
sir.
again, I think the key here is that's one of the things you might want to consider. Is if people are going to do this, much like Debridemont, we might want to start saying that they have to have, or recommending that they have professional liability insurance, especially as many of you all, or many of your colleagues, I should say, are moving into a more entrepreneurial vent, running their own clinics and that kind of stuff. And we'll talk about that a little bit later on. But again, I think it's something you all should consider doing if you want to proceed on, and I'm happy to support you to get this done.
I have a question about that too, Dr. Van. So you're saying to go to this LDH and the committee and to get the statutory protection, I think is what you said. Is this a charge that OTAC would want to do, or is this a charge that LOTA should be doing?
Well, I'm going to
Pursuing.
say, I'm going to say to you that I think it would be an opportunity for the Louisiana organization and OTAC to work together. Okay.
Okay.
I think it would be demonstrating that there's a lot of unity in the community to get this done. I think that the key here is that it really is something that I think you all have not considered, because so many of you all work for facilities that cover you by your insurance, and they would be telling you what the best way to do things are. But I think that given the, how do I want to say, the entrepreneurial spirit I'm seeing in the face of COVID, where many of you all are now opening your own sort of services, telemedicine, private clinics and things like that. I just want you to realize that there's a group of you all who have a different mindset, for example, than we usually think about. And that's really all I want to consider. I'm gonna pull up I think I have the document ready for you all to see what the other states are doing. Well, I think I got it. Where did I put it? Here it is. Okay, so you can see, maybe I ought to do this differently. Can y'all read that?
Yes.
Okay, so as we scroll down, first state there is Georgia. They're adding to propose a bill. Illinois passed a law in 2021, adding to the scope of practice. Iowa's board meeting in March, form a subcommittee to research. So the key here is, I think what you guys need to decide is, number one, do you want to try and do this by rules? And I think it's easily done by rules if the board supports it. I think the only reason you would want to go to the legislature is because the board says no to rules. Because if we do this by rules, it's a lot easier for you all, and it draws a lot less attention from competitors that might want to keep you from having it done. But that's your choice.
Okay. All right. So does anybody else have any other questions for Randall, or any thoughts about all of the things
Well,
we've discussed so far?
I will say, as I do own a private practice, we have to have malpractice insurance. We have contract staff, but we have the malpractice for everyone, and it is required by our insurance companies as far as reimbursement. So we have to have proof of that. Not that I wouldn't have it anyway, but the malpractice is a requirement. That makes sense?
Tell me, do you buy it? Do you all qualify for the Patients Compensation Fund oversight? And board, PCF, LAPCF?
No, I'm not aware of that.
So the only policy premium you pay is to an insurance company and nothing to the PCF, correct?
Correct.
Correct.
Then you realize that you probably do not have the protections that the PCF gives you. You're correct. You
Okay.
need to know
Okay.
about that. We can
Okay.
talk about that another day if you want.
Okay.
So as far as kind of trying to get a little bit further with dry needling, I mean, the idea that we are wanting to bring it to the board, I mean, we've been discussing this for a while. Randall's come on, they requested this of OTAC for our advice and everything. Dr. Van has said, hey, let's look at what the national organization is saying. Thank goodness Randall was involved very closely or within the walls of that study and things that they were doing for AOTA. So we have, this firsthand knowledge to kind of talk with him about that. I guess my larger question, Dr. Van, before we go pursue this or say, hey, we want the board to maybe approve this, you're asking us to maybe look into this LDH and getting the protection with.
Actually, I would say no. I would say in parallel. I think that as you know, one can be done in parallel. It doesn't have to be done at all, but I think you probably want to do it. But why don't we go ahead and see what we want to ask the board to do, and then get their permission to start drafting the rules. I mean, unfortunately, I can't get it on for the December 13th meeting, but I can get it on for the January meeting if you want to press on, and then say to them that, but it'd be helpful if we want to do this for January, if you could get from me what Mississippi is doing, we can put that in. This document that I'm showing on the screen right now is going to be very helpful because it's going to show basically what all the other states are doing.
They're
And I
jumping
think
on
that's
board.
important
Right.
because they always want to know what's best practices in the rest of the states.
Mhm.
And so I think we can use that. That can be helpful. But I think obviously the first step is we get them to buy into the idea of you all doing dry needling. Then after that's done, we start to structure the rules. We put proposals. We certainly will work together with you all. We have to have an extra meeting or two with the committee here, and then get what we want those rules to look like. Then we present those rules to the board. The board says, okay, we like the way these rules are written, and no, we don't want to do this, we want to do that. We finalize the rules, and then we start the formal rulemaking process with the state. And that way, everybody kind of gets a lot of participation along the way. And our critics and other colleagues can make comments in multiple areas of the meetings, and also by law at a hearing we would have to have for the rules anyway. So we will do this for this committee if that's what it wants to do, and we'll get it started. Hopefully we can get something to them to give us a titular approval to start drafting in January, and we can put that on the schedule of things we do here.
Okay, and so you're thinking that you can probably get us on the board meeting for January or February, possibly, depending upon how busy the agenda is for them to.
Well,
request
the
this
agenda
startup?
for January is going to be pretty easy to get on right now if we don't wait
Okay.
too late. But just all we really want them to say is, look, these are what other states are doing. We'd like to go ahead and start writing the rules to allow the OTAs, the OTs here not the OTAs, the OTs in Louisiana to start doing dry needling. And we want to go start drafting the rules. And if the board says no, then we're done. And you all go to the legislature and try and get the act amended to do it. Or you can say, okay, they say yes, and then we work together to make it work exactly like we want it to work.
Okay, and you think with the amount of information we have from everything from Randall and what's going on with our national organization and that the other states, that we're in a good spot to request this?
I think we are.
Okay.
I'd like to ask, if Randall would, and you, Amy, or your successor, which are your successor, and you and Randall all appear by Zoom at the meeting in January, because I'm thinking we'll still be doing Zoom meetings in January.
Okay, all right. So do we need to put forth a motion then, right? To
Please.
make that happen? All right. Leslie, you wanna take that away?
Sorry.
Are you okay with doing the motion for that? Motion to
Approve it?
motion to send it forward to the board.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, all right. So what's your official motion? What all do we need to say in it? I guess, Dr. Van, we motion.
I think the OTAC committee has looked at the national organization's recommendations and would like to move forward with a rule change to allow the OTs in Louisiana to do dry needling as part of their routine work with special qualifications to be determined by rulemaking. And other issues to provide for the safety and security of the patients in Louisiana.
Okay. All right. So that's a motion. And do I have a second to that motion?
I second the motion.
Ingrid seconds the motion. Any nays? Okay, the motion passes. We will pursue that. Wahoo! That's awesome. I'm excited. Randall, I see you. It's more than a golf clap, I'm sure. Wahoo. All right, guys. Well, thank you, Randall, so very much. Of course, you're welcome to stay, but I definitely know that you have a honey-do list from your wife that's probably very, very long. Yeah. Make sure you eat something.
Yeah,
And-
that's my next
yeah.
project is to eat first.
And
I
happy
really
nuptials.
appreciate the opportunity, guys, to do this. I always wanted to do this the right way. As soon as I found out, I withdrew what I was doing, stuck to friends and family, and knew that we had to do this the right way. And so I appreciate everyone's patience with this. And I appreciate Dr. Van and Amy and your support. And I thank y'all so much. And I'm blessed to be here, and I'll be happy to continue to help however y'all need me to.
Yay.
Thank
Well,
you so
Thanks,
much. We'll be
Randall.
calling you.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Great
Thank
job.
you.
Congratulations to your daughter.
Thank you.
All right. Well, that is wonderful. Okay, so our next item on the agenda is Ingrid is going to talk about our laws and rules update that we have.
Can I be made co-host so I could share also?
Hang on a
Um,
second. Hang on. Let's see.
Hey, Darby, I see you made it.
Got it, Dr. Van.
Okay, good enough. Thank you, Al.
Let's see.
There's Ingrid. I'm sorry.
This faculty,
All
Ingrid
right.
Frank.
Yeah, I got it. Okay, there we go. All right, Miss Ingrid, you're ready.
Great, thank you.
Dr. Claudia need to stop sharing.
No, I can do it. I can do it.
I'm stopping it.
Okay. Okay, I'm trying to find the right one. There it is. No, that wasn't it either. So, a lot of stuff open. Let's see, course, quiz. There it is, found it. All right. So I met with Susie yesterday, on the 8th. We met for quite a long time, went over a lot of things. I got some background information that might already be familiar to some of you, but it wasn't to me. She pointed out that our course is one of the older ones that she created back in 2013. And she used a lot of almost layman's language in it. As an example, this is the current course. When you read this, the board was established in the 1890s with the overall goal, it's not like this verbatim stuff from the laws and rules. Even going on down a little further here, the board's rules mandate the creation of an advisory committee. The committee members are. So it's not like she just cut and pasted. She kind of did it in layman's language. She said that since then, she hasn't really been doing that very much. Most of the other courses are basically consisting of verbatim stuff from the rules and laws of various the other practices that are licensed with LSBME. And she wanted to know from our perspective whether we wanted to keep the course in kind of a layman's language. So that's one thing we talked about that I wanted to bring up to y'all that we kind of have to decide upon. All right, the next thing we talked about was how many questions are on the current initial certificate licensure examination. The answer is 12. There are currently 12 questions on the initial licensure exam for OTs in Louisiana. So I also need to get a feel from you guys on if you think 12 is an appropriate number for for the initial. And then we also have to have a little discussion about how many questions we feel would be appropriate for the annual jurisprudence, rules and laws test. She and I both agreed that it should definitely be 10 or less, no more than 10 for the annual, possibly just 5, with those questions changing each year a little bit, even though the course will stay the same. But any feedback you guys have on what you think should be the appropriate number of questions for the annual, and whether you think the initial should have more than 12 would be good. The other thing is that we are apparently the first discipline to include in this rule of requiring an annual rules and law review and test. The physicians, and Dr. Van would be able to speak more to this than me, the physicians are moving in that direction, have not yet done so, and will be moving. Some of the other disciplines are all talking about it now. No one's actually inserted it into their rules yet, but there is a lot of talk amongst all of the disciplines. Some of the disciplines are talking about doing annual, but most are actually talking about doing a biannual, I think. So that's just some background that we talked about. Another thing I learned was that the course and the quiz is currently administered on a Moodle platform, and that is probably going to go away, possibly to CE Broker's learning management system, but possibly not. The board is still looking at various options. But currently, the way the quiz happens is the applicant goes through the course, and then they take a test, the 12-question test. If they get an answer wrong, feedback pops up saying why it was wrong and where they can find the right answer. And then they have to retake the test, and a different question might pop into the test on their second go round. If we move to the CE Broker platform, it's not going to quite work like that. There would be what's called a pre-quiz, and that will give you feedback. If you get anything wrong, the right answers will show up. Then you review the course. And we did talk about, do we want to make it to where that we force them to take the course? Anyway, let me just explain. So pre-quiz with feedback, then they take the course, then they take the post-test. That would be the one that's actually graded to decide whether they passed and can renew their license. The post-test would not give them any feedback if they got anything wrong, but they can take the post-test as many times as needed in order to pass. I was concerned that since there might potentially be a pre-quiz built in that's going to give the right answers, that a lot of applicants would simply go straight from the pre-quiz to the post-test and skip reviewing the content. So she said that if we wanted, they can make it to where it forces the applicant to at least open the course. We cannot really force them to read it, but we can force them to open it at least.
I have a question real quick. Are the pre and post tests the same?
No,
No,
No.
My impression was they were, but not mine.
Okay.
trust me,
sorry.
Susie's gonna make it so they're not the same.
Right.
Okay. All right, next, we started. Oh, let me see what, hold on, give me a second. All right, next, she sent me the actual language that got put, it's called section 443, I believe, or 433. Let me pull that up real quick. Where's my ability to share at? Okay, here we go. New share. Okay, this is the the language that was put into LSBME's rules regarding the use of CE broker. And down here in section 443 is where it states that this chapter shall apply to physicians and all allied health care providers licensed by the board. So Susie's question was, first, should this be included in the course that people take, which I thought would be appropriate. Then it also came around to a discussion of, should this verbiage be within our rules? It's in our rules already in the sense that it's in the LSBME board document, but it's, if an OT was looking at just their own rules, which is what most OTs are going to do, they wouldn't see this language about the electronic education tracker as the documentation procedure. So that was something she wanted me to bring to you guys. And she was also, I think, going to ask a lawyer about it.
I think this is that particular issue, you ought to just let our rulemaking attorneys who do all that, adjust that as, the way they see fit.
That's
I
fine.
think the difficulty that you don't want to, if you start requiring that to be put in early, you maybe have the last rule change and you're not, let's get what we need to get done for you all without delaying it any more than we have to by trying to add additional things to the rules. I think the key here is one of the benefits of using the CE broker testing system is when you take the course, whatever deciding we say, whether it's an hour of CE or an hour 1.5 an hour of continuing units, it'll automatically go into the course, into your transcript. You can't use it for anything else, but it'll be a free 1 hour, free hour and a half of continuing education units that you get from the board. It counts to the board. It won't be, you won't have to make it a certificate that you upload or anything like that, and it's done for you all. So I think we can make the testing itself work. Susie likes to give complicated tests to make sure that you know the issue. I think that she's going to make sure that you have a complicated enough test. But I think in the long run, as we now moving to try and track everybody's CEs, this is the best thing for everybody in terms of making it easy, unified, and continuous. If you do start separating out from the rest of the people, it's going to make it harder for you all. And that's the last thing I want to do, is make it harder for anybody.
Oh, no. I love CE broker. I found it very easy to use. When I did my license, no issues. I like it.
Same.
Okay, so Susie did say she was going to talk to a lawyer, and Dr. Van saying, let's let.
Yeah, we don't do anything in the rules without the lawyers. Trust me. I don't let that happen.
All right.
Not
Okay.
possible.
The thing we then came across was we then started looking at specific questions, quiz questions, test questions that she had a question about, or I had a question about, or that we had questions and we couldn't actually find the answers in the rules. So, we were having discussion about specific questions. So what came up was the fact that in our current rules, we have some verbiage in regards to if you fail to satisfy your continuing professional education requirements. This is our current rules. And it says that the license of the applicant shall remain in full force and effect for a period of 60 days following, a licensee who fails to provide their CEs, their continuing ed requirements, their license will remain in full force for 60 days if they notify the board that they're still working on it, following which it will be deemed expired or unrenewed. So in other words, the way we have it now, an applicant has 60 days after the expiration of their license to get the continuing ed units in. And she informed me that there's going to be a new process where a person, currently a person can pay for their license and renew it with LSB and me, and without having uploaded all of their hours on CE Broker. Right now, that can happen. A friend of mine just did that. He was 3 weeks late with his. But what Susie's telling me is it's going to get connected. What was the terminology she used? That and that when that goes into place, no one will be able to pay for their license if they have not uploaded all their CEUs. Let me see what it says here.
And this is being done because we cannot have 16 different ways of doing it.
Mhm.
We have 16 license classes and everybody's got a little subtlety. So we're trying to unify it. Basically, no ticking, no laundry. You don't have your CEs, you don't renew. That's the best way to protect the public. Because if we say that CEs are going to benefit the public, then let's make sure everybody does them or you don't renew your license. Now, the net effect of non-renewal of the license is we don't report anything to the National Practitioner Data Bank. Your employer may jump up and down. You may not be able to bill your insurance companies if you have a private clinic, okay? But that's just the way of the world. And I think here the key is we were charged back in 2019 by the legislative auditor to make sure people did their CEs in a better way than we were doing it. And that was auditing 2 and 3%. And we were still having fallouts at that. About 50% of the 2 or 3% that we were auditing were not giving us the CEs. So again, this is a way we ensure the legislature that you're doing your CEs. And the other thing is, if you don't get to renew and then you finish it, say the day afterwards, you have a flat fee, a late renewal fee that everybody would expect. And I think you all do it by your birthdays.
Yes.
Yes.
So it's the last day of your birth month. So you have to the last day of your birth month to do it. And if you're going to start getting notices from CE Broker that you have a requirement of so many CE units, and you only have, let's say you have a requirement of 20, like I do, and I'll get a notice saying you only have 10 of the required 20. Or if they sent out the notice today for my March renewal, it would say you have 26 of the required 20, because I've already done 26 already. So again, I think that's going to help everybody know what they need to do. And they'll be able to be getting that information by email to say, hey, you know what, I need to renew. And it says that I need some more Cs before I renew so I can get them done. And I think the key here is that the legislature in its wisdom wants us to do continuing education because it believes it benefits the patients. So if we're going to do it, we got to do it right. And this is the way we're doing it. And we're trying to standardize it across all of the 16 licensing classes.
So Dr. Van, this language that we have in our current rules, can this stand? Does this need to change?
It's going to change. That's going to be a perfunctory change that we do. It's not going to really be up to y'all. We're going to change it.
Okay. All right. Let's see what else. Okay, so I guess what I need to know from you all is any thoughts you have about the number, because Susie wants, from our perspective, how many questions we think should be on the annual test.
Mhm.
Are you guys okay with that the course stays the same every year? It's not like they're taking a different course. They're going to take the same course every year. It's just that every year will be a different test.
I'm willing to give my perspective on this. I think annual should be 5. I think that initial 10 to 12, I mean, they're new at this and just having to go through that. I think that's appropriate. I don't know how I feel about forcing the course, but I mean, our idea and the reason why we wanted to put this in our continuing education requirements is the fact that we did want people to take a closer look at the rules and regulations because, well, I mean, it's their duty to do it, but this is sort of that would be a force, of course, but I'm okay with it being forced, but I do definitely want to hear from the rest of the committee and how you guys feel about it. But I think 5 questions is more than reasonable, especially if you're already having to spend time on the forced course, if that's what we decide. But I do think 5 would be perfectly fine. How do you feel, Leslie?
I was gonna say, I think taking the course, being forced to take the course is what we set out to do a while ago, so I agree with that.
Okay.
And I was gonna say 8, but 5 is okay with me too.
Okay, 5 to 8. Okay, good.
Yeah.
And let's see, Darby, I know you're on the phone. Do you have anything you'd like to add about any of that?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I mean, I think 5 is fair. The only thing I'm thinking is repeating the course every year. I think maybe a little redundant.
I did have a
But-
question about that. Thank you for bringing that up, Darby. I apologize for interrupting you, but we were told that biannual wasn't a possibility when we first started this. Has that changed, Dr. Van?
Well, we can make it biannually, but let me make this suggestion to you, okay? Let's say a rule changes in 1 year. If you don't let us change the test, there are going to be smart lawyers who are going to say, well, if we're not required to know these rules because you don't test us on them every year, then my client shouldn't be punished for not honoring the new rule. So we would suggest that you take it every year because rules can change at any time. And again, I will quote Dr. John Bobear, who's, used to sit in this chair and was a professor of medicine at LSU and a colleague of my dad's. When I was a freshman medical student, he made the comment to the freshman class that the more time the fecal matter hits the barn door, the more likely it is to stick. And I think it's important that even if you're redundant, you'll know some things that you didn't know, and you'll be more tuned because you'll be reading the course. I think we're going to talk a little bit later on about the idea of what some of your colleagues are thinking about now in terms of what they should be doing in terms of billing and things later on. I think Amy and I we're going to talk about that. But I think the key is as rule changes, and more importantly, even if they don't change, they read those rules and understand more about what they're supposed to do and how they're supposed to do it. And then I think you don't see the questions that Amy and I see almost regularly every month sometimes from some of your colleagues about, well, can I do this or why can't I do that? And I simply say, here's the rules. Did you read those? Oh, no. Well, this is what it says. You have to follow the rules. And so, again, I think it's important. I think it's important that you take it every year. But more importantly, from a disciplinary perspective, if the rules change, we still got to hold you to it. And you can say, well, nobody educated me about it. And we don't want to give anybody that opportunity to exempt themselves from discipline because they weren't, quote, educated every year about it. So that's my perspective. But if you want to do it every other year, that's fine. But there'll be some people that may walk on you all over that, but that's your decision.
Yeah, well, then I feel like considering that the rules can change, it's an excellent point that it is important because, again, like you said, if you're not actively looking for it each year, you wouldn't even be aware of it.
Right.
And when I said that the course wouldn't change, is not that I was misstating. Susie any rule changes will be inserted into the course. So that would change. And Susie's already aware that if there was a rules change, then that area needs a question for that year. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, but if you're only taking it every other year, you wouldn't know about it for 2
Oh,
years.
no, I'm kind of a fan of the annual personally.
Well, we also said that we were going to give, I'm sorry, Ingrid. We
Oh,
also
I
said we were going to
was-
do continuing education credit for it. So
Yeah.
we said we were going to add ethics and the rules and laws so that we can and we were going to give those, 3 extra hours of continuing education as a requirement when we were trying to change it back to 15. So then it will be a requirement that you meet every year to take the rules and laws. That's what we said initially whenever we first started this, however long ago.
No, I'm not arguing about that. I'm just saying that I made it sound like the course would never change, and that was not correct. When we make rules changes, Susie will alter the course, add that into the course. And she also realizes that if a rule changes, then that would be a question we want to add into the test that year. So it's a living thing. It's not a stagnant thing. It would be The test would, the 5 questions would change each year. The course will mostly stay the same, but if we change a rule, that will be added to the course.
All right, Kelly, Brandon, how do you feel about that?
I agree with taking it every year because I've read the rules hundreds of times, taught the rules. And based on the questions that we get, I could find something new, or look at it a different way. So I think they could take the course, and if something doesn't really pertain to them, then it doesn't really register on what that means until they actually are trying to find something specific, and then it makes sense. So I mean, you could read these over and over and over and find something new every time.
What about the annual number of questions? You okay with?
I agree with
5 and 8? Okay.
Yeah, and I like that that they'll change the question. If something in the rules changes, it'll be a question about that. That's really good.
All right. And let's see, Brenda, you have anything to add to that?
I'm good with the annual redo and the 5 questions for the annual.
And the force of course.
Yes.
Force of course is a horse. Okay, never mind. Kim Solari, how do you feel?
Absolutely. I think annual is indicated for us, and I'm good with 5 to 8, either way.
All right. Okay, Carolyn.
Yes, I think it should be annual, and I think questions annually would be good.
All right, and Michelle.
Yes, I agree with everything y'all are saying, and so questions 5 to 8 and changing as we need to and annually.
Fantastic. And Ingrid, you told us about what we needed to talk about, but you agree with what everybody's saying, 5 and a force and annual. Okay.
Yep.
All right. Well, so I motion that our laws and rules, when we do finally get the test, well, can we do that? Can we motion today, Dr. Van, about that?
Yeah, make a motion away. I'm working on your rules anyway.
All right, perfect. I motion that our laws and rules test, when we hopefully change our continuing education to require it, would be annual, with annual questions being at least 5 questions. The initial law and rule test would be anywhere from 10 to 12 questions, and that it would be a forced course to take every year.
A second.
Who was that? The second, Ingrid?
Kelly.
Kelly. Okay, Kelly seconds that. Any nays? And the motion passes. Fantastic. All right. So we're not through with Ingrid just yet.
I mean, I have a question.
Yeah.
I mean, I know that there's some information in the rules that's not quite accurate. And I don't know, what do you have to do to update that?
Tell me what you want to change. And
Okay.
as we do the revision, we'll get it in.
Okay, I'll have to look through it, but I'll do that.
And
Now, let me say this, let's do this. I think that it was about 2.5 years ago, Amy, that we looked at these rules and went through them item by item. Let me get the minutes from that meeting and what we suggested. I'll try and get that up together with you all, and we'll talk about starting that process a little bit, finalizing that process in light of today's current issues and where we want to go with those rules. Possibly we can have that meeting, in the not too distant future.
Okay.
And Carolyn, some of those things that you found are probably some things that we're going to discuss, like
Right.
supervision and referrals and things like that.
Yeah, that's after Ingrid. we
Okay.
got a few things planned to talk about, definitely. Okay. All right. So continuing education subchapter H. Okay, guys, we have the culmination of several years of work right here. Ingrid is a superstar, and I wish I could give her a gold star on her forehead to tell her how awesome she is. But she has been working on this with every suggestion that we have made, with some further suggestions of things that maybe we didn't necessarily get to talk about, and we probably need to talk about today. It should be relatively easy to go through with what we've discussed, but I'm going to leave or open up the floor to Ingrid to talk about subchapter H.
All right.
introducing a
So
star.
what I've got up here now is the version with some grammatical changes that Carolyn gave me. So this is our latest with the grammatical changes. And I want to start by addressing Kelly's concerns that she sent by email, which one of them had to do with how do we define what a week is here. And Kelly, you kind of basically answered it within your email that it would be the academic fieldwork coordinator would be the one that knows how many weeks, you know, if there's more than one fieldwork educator that's working with a student, you know, if it's a split situation, and then the number of weeks that each OT would get, and draft the document appropriately based on the number of weeks. As far as the fact that we don't have a standard week defined by the AOTA, and that's true. The AOTA does not say that each week of fieldwork has to be a full 40 hours. It just says full time. Full time is usually defined as greater than 32 hours a week. So again, that it is by definition, the academic fieldwork coordinator has to set the student up with a full-time experience. So these weeks we are just simply, you know, we'll let the academic fieldwork coordinator's definition of full-time stand, I think, for each week.
And they can patch those together. Like if it was 2 days 1 week, 3 days 1 week, then the fieldwork coordinator would just have to keep up with that and put those together.
Yes, if you in a situation where the student is with a one OT 2 days a week and another OT 3 days a week, which does happen, then yeah, it would just be the simple math. 3 days a week times 8 weeks equals this many weeks. Then we had about ineffective fieldwork educators, and we have had this talk before. It's kind of like if a person goes to a continuing ed course, sits themselves in the back row, and then proceeds to do their Amazon shopping or updating their Facebook page or whatever, you know, they're technically at the continuing ed. We're giving them the CEUs. We can't force them to learn anything. And that could happen here. I definitely had an OT on the last go round in the summer who phoned in her fieldwork education role. But I also had 34 who clearly learned a lot from the experience and were true educators. So I just like we can't force someone to learn something at a continuing ed. If anything, I think this is more, how do I want to say, there's actually more things that can happen, because as you said in the email, if an academic fieldwork coordinator knows that a fieldwork educator is not very good, they're going to try to use that person minimally or not at all. And so, you know, the person who's phoning it in like we had over the summer, yes, under this situation, she would get her 4 units. But she's probably not going to be used again as a fieldwork educator. She's probably not going to be able to do it again. Whereas she can keep going to her CE courses and shopping on Amazon all she wants while she's there. So I know that was a big concern when we first started talking about allowing fieldwork education to earn you CEUs, but I personally am comfortable with that. I don't know if anybody else has any more concerns about that before we get into
Dr. Van is raising his hand.
Okay, yes.
Okay, so let's play this out because I'm concerned about the following potential. You have somebody who wants to use those academic hours for their the fieldwork coordination hours for the continuing education. That has to be verified by who and how. And let's say they put off doing their stuff like so many people do till the last day before and they can't get it in. Are we going to say, I'm sorry, you didn't get it in, you can't renew, and you'll be working without a renewed license, or you won't be working at all and you'll pay a penalty? So let's talk about how we can handle that, because that's going to be one of the issues. See, when you deal with constrained CEUs that we've already taken out of our approval and put into the, the national bank, they've approved it. They got to submit the credit hours and that's it. Here, we got a different system and we want to talk about how that system is going to operate for you all.
Right. We do have that here. The documentation is going to consist of a certificate or a letter from the academic fieldwork coordinator of the affiliating school, attesting to the licensee's role and number of weeks as a level 2 fieldwork educator. It definitely doesn't take any longer to get your certificate from the academic fieldwork coordinator than it does after you finish a continuing ed course, and you sometimes have to wait a couple of weeks to get your certificate. Most academic fieldwork coordinators get that certificate around pretty quickly.
Okay, so you think that's going to be practical and not going to have a hold up of people? Okay.
I do think it's going to be practical. Kelly, I mean, you're in education. Carolyn, what do y'all think?
I know as the fieldwork educator, I mean, the fieldwork coordinator for my program, I get those out just as soon as I get the stuff from the fieldwork educator regarding my student, their grades and the documents that they're supposed to turn in. I will immediately send that back to them. So it's just like they complete it and then so they get their certificate for completion.
Yeah, I think that's going to go pretty smoothly.
All right.
Okay, so let's see. Let's go back to the stuff in green, which was anything that's in green is language that we need to all agree on, or that that had to get changed for some reason. Okay, the document, we wanted to add something about if you go to a course that has been approved by AOTA, LOTA, or NBCOT, exactly what do you turn in? So this may be redundant from what's already under section 443, but we've said that documentation shall consist of a course completion certificate from the course sponsor. The certificate shall include the name and date of the course and the number of CEUs earned.
That's great. We love that.
Okay.
Should it say contact hours? Because again, NBCOT does not issue CEUs, but they do give certificates saying the number of contact hours.
So just changes to the number of CEUs or contact hours?
I would use, or. I would use the or.
Okay. Okay. All right, we had already talked about that. Okay, now we're talking about section C.
One section, go back to that. So I'm thinking of all where it says course sponsor, and I'm thinking of all the people who do the like 1 and 2 hour things. And it's like not a sponsor, but it's a person giving it.
As long as they've already had their course approved by AOTA, LOTA, or NBCOT, then they've got to come, if it's a single, that's like me, I've given continuing education courses that were approved by biotech. We did create completion certificates for all the participants.
Right, no, I understand that, but the wording says a sponsor. And so do you become the sponsor if you're giving it, or what is your definition of sponsor there? Because I feel like it's a little, like, just so people understand that, like, if it's you giving it, the certificate is not necessarily from the sponsor, but from the presenter, I guess. I'm just trying to clarify how that would work if you give it versus, say, LOTA puts on a course.
If you're a presenter and you've received LOTA approval of your course, then you're the sponsor of the course.
Okay, so that would be the definition of the sponsor. Okay.
But the course still would have to be approved by one of those bodies we talked about, the AOTA, the LOTA, or the
Correct.
NBCOT.
Exactly.
If you give a course and it's not approved by that, you can give a certificate, but it's not going to count.
Exactly.
Right.
Okay, I have a question for me. So like I wanted to find out more about the dry filing, and I went and did a certification, but so it's not AOTA, it's not LOTA, and it's not NBCOT. How do I get approval for that?
I think what our thoughts were were previously that you could go through the process with LOTA or AOTA.
Okay.
Right now it's different. I think they're actually asking us, Dr. Van, and we're saying whether that's worthy of a continuing education, and then they're filling in CE broker that, yeah, this one's okay. But as
We're
we're
trying to get
changing-
away from that.
Right, that's why we're changing our subchapter so that it's only AOTA, LOTA, and NBCOT. So we're out of the picture of it. So Carolyn, in the future, what that would look like is you're going to go to NDT course and it's not put on by AOTA. Kind of big surprise if it didn't, but nonetheless, it may not be. You would want to get your course approved through LOTA. They should have a process after this, once this is hopefully passed. LOTA should have one. Theirs would probably not be as costly as AOTA. That's just my suggestion. NBCOT is not necessarily going to do that. They really just only do their own navigator and some other, things that they do for like state regulators and stuff like that. And there may be some other things for NBCOT, but for all intensive purposes, you would want to go through AOTA and say, I'm taking this course. I want to see if it can get approved, kind of thing. My suggestion would be you go to LOTA.
Okay.
That would be my suggestion.
Now, what you could do if you want, you can add into shall be approved by, in addition to the NBCOT, you could add or AMA. So that way, if you decided to go to a course about peripheral vascular disease and diabetes put on by the AMA, you could get credit for it if you want to do that. But again, the goal here is to get out of the individual credentialing of these things for the, at least this committee and the
Okay.
board, and then have national people do it so that we could say, not only are we doing this, but the quality of the education is nationally recognized.
I don't mind myself adding AMA. I think it's wonderful.
I would
to
say,
learn
I
more
think that's a
things.
good idea.
Yes. But I mean, how's the rest of the community feel? I know Leslie said yes. Anybody else?
Yeah, just 'cause-
I guess just a concern of, is there still language where it has to be germane to the practice of occupational therapy? And I know a lot of our approval discussions sometimes surround, how does it directly relate to OT? So are we going to somehow cloud the waters?
I agree with Brenda.
Okay.
Because I might go take something, I don't know. I
That's a
can't
very
think
good point, Brenda. Yeah.
it may not be related, and then it just seems like we might be opening a can of worms that we don't need to.
That's a
Okay.
very good idea. That's a
Alright.
good point.
Anybody else? Having Kelly or Kim or anything, y'all have any suit? One way or the other?
No, I think those are good points, though. I agree.
All right, well, we'll keep it where it seems like the majority is okay with the AOTA, LOTA, and NBC, just so that it's just the quality OT stuff versus, I mean, not that we don't need the knowledge of those other things, but for sure. Okay. All right.
But if we did, let's say we did take a course, we would then approach a LOTA or AOTA to approve it before we submit it, right?
Correct.
Okay.
It would have to be approved by LOT. Once you confine it, then it's got to be those. A CE broker can't give it to you.
And you know what's going to be interesting, now that a lot more continuing is online, this is going to come up more and more of almost like I've already taken the course, can you approve it? Because in the old days, if a course came to town, if a continuing ed course came to town, they would have worked ahead of time with OTAC or to get approval for the state before even bothering to come to New Orleans to put on a 2-day, continuing ed event. But now that it's online and, you're taking stuff online that's nationwide, they haven't necessarily done the legwork of asking all 50 states for approval for their course. So this kind of thing will probably be coming up more and more. If people take the course, then they try to get state approval.
Right. And I've
Yeah.
taken some fantastic online courses, really some better than face-to-face courses, just because I can, I don't have the ability to travel a lot of places, fun wise, but online courses have been great and,
Yeah.
but not necessarily approved.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, because they're not going like
And I agree with that, but with moving to CE broker, we need to keep it at national level or national state level.
Oh, definitely. I mean, otherwise it'd be willy-nilly.
Yeah, no willy-nilly around here.
Thank you.
So for section C was we added this about 6 months ago regarding that a licensee can earn continuing ed for presenting, not just attending, but presenting a workshop or an institute one time. If they're doing it routinely, they're not going to keep getting CEUs. So Brenda made sure we added the word initial. So a licensee may earn CEUs for initial presentations or workshops presented by the licensee if they have been approved by AOTA, LOTA, or NBCOT. So new added in green was the documentation requirement. Documentation shall consist of a course completion certificate, an official program, or a letter from the course sponsor. The certificate, program, or letter shall have the applicant's name listed as the presenter, state the number of participant CEUs or course hours earned. And then in red, I've got about Dr. Van's email regarding being a presenter and stating that, I guess for the physicians, that they obtain 2 times the primary hours of the course is provided to the presenter. So that was something I wanted to bring up for discussion with us. Do we give the presenter the flat number of CEUs earned as by the participant? Or do we think it's appropriate for them to earn 2 times the number of CEUs that were granted to a participant?
I agree with the 2 times because they already worked to make this program happen. They were doing research to present it and to finalize it. I'm okay with giving the 2 times.
Me too. I agree.
I agree.
I agree.
So then the number of instead of saying the number of CEUs earned is equal to the number of CEUs granted, it would be right here, the number of CEUs earned is equal to 2 times the number of CEUs granted to a course participant.
Perfect.
But that's for the person that designs and presents the course that is approved by AOTA, LOTA, or NBCOT.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
And
Exactly.
again, CEUs or contact hours.
Yep. Good.
Whatever you want to call them.
Yep.
Just make sure we're covered on both ways.
Thank you, Brenda.
Ingrid,
Yes.
so they're gonna get the number and it's going to be
Darby, we can't hear you.
the first time that they present it, correct? So like if they present it 10 times, they're only gonna get it for that initial one.
That's correct. Only the initial time.
Yeah, and then I guess it would be up to LOTA to determine, like, if they just tweak the title a little bit, but it's really the content, that they would still, whether or not they would get those hours again.
The person who's creating the workshop, the licensee who's created the workshop or the presentation, they have to send it to the LOTA to get it as an approved continuing ed course. If the LOTA approves the course as a continuing ed course, then when the presenter presents it the first time, then they will also earn CEUs in addition to all the people who attended.
Got it. I'm kind of concerned that a lot of the ones that we were getting to review, remember the days when we were reviewing them and people would do like these 3-hour courses at hospitals and then just sort of like tweak the name a little and then do it again, like within the same years. Brenda, I know you remember us being like, that is the same exact course, it's the same schedule, it's everything. And so that person, they would get, if it was like a 3-hour course, they'd get 6 hours and then they sort of tweak it just a little, but the content, everything's the same, and then they would get 6 more. So what I'm saying is that would be up to LOTA to watch for that and regulate that, correct?
CE broker should, right? With the initial presentation being given
No,
as
because
their
if
continuing
LOTA
ed.
approves it, then CE broker is going to accept it.
Yeah, I agree. So
real
LOT
issue
it's
is,
incumbent upon LOTA to discern whether or not it's content that was used before.
and also if somebody, if it slips by, understand that could be considered to be unprofessional conduct anyway. And if we get a complaint about that, the investigations department would deal with it. Again, I think the key here is that I don't know that you can protect everybody from all kinds of, how do I want to say, misadventures. But the real question is this an attempt to deceive? And if there's a complaint about it, they'll deal with it. I know that you can prevent all of those kind of attempts to deceive. The LOTA, that's why we pick them. You know, if you think LOTA is not good enough to do it, then we drop them. But I think if LOTA is going to do it, they're going to have a responsibility to make sure it is either a different course with a different name or the same course with a different name.
Okay.
Awesome. Does that satisfy your question, Darby?
Yes, definitely.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. I just want to
Okay.
make sure that it's just the initial.
Yeah, just initial. Okay, and then section D is dealing with when an occupational therapist goes for a post-professional advanced degree in occupational therapy, or an OT assistant begins a degree to become an occupational therapist. My question, we had already agreed on everything in black, which was that 1 credit hour will earn a 1 credit hour course would earn 1 contact hour, a 2 credit hour course would earn 2 contact hours, etc. But when I was thinking about course presenters, you know, getting 2 times, it just made me start really thinking about when people are taking a 3 credit hour occupational therapy course with a university, that is just equivalent to much more than 3 hours of a continuing education course. And so my question to y'all was if we thought these would also be worthy of equal to 2 times the number of credit hours.
I mean, I agree with you on that. As far as, you know, I know that it's you spend well more than 3 hours doing anything with a course that you're taking. I don't think it's unreasonable to say 2 times whatever that is. If it's just a 1 hour course, it would be worth 2. If it was a 2 hour course, it's worth 4, etc. So I don't have a problem with that. Does anyone else see any
Again, you know,
issue?
we talked about this the last time. We said, when I asked this question, and I'm sure I'll ask it again, and I know the board will ask it, why are we giving continuing education credits for educational work, period? Okay. How, you know, is somebody who's going to school, they're earning a credit for their degree, and we're going to also count it for their continuing education requirements. I think that they're double dipping, and I think 1-to-1 is fine. I don't want to call too much attention to it by double it to say 2-to-1, because then the board may say we don't want to give that at all. So you do what you want to do, but I'm just concerned that this is something that they're doing to further their career, and I'm not sure that it's necessarily going to. While we know it's going to improve their treatment of patients, it's kind of like saying to somebody who, for example, like me, who goes back and gets a master's degree in healthcare administration, is that continuing medical education hours? No, it's not for me. Okay. And I just think that the key here is that you want to make sure that you can justify this, and I wouldn't call too much attention to it, because I think people are going to say you're just furthering your career. It's not continuing education, but you guys do what you want to do.
That was, you know, all that discussion we had is why we limited it to literally these 3 degrees that we have. It has to be a degree, an advanced practice degree. It's really like an advanced practice degree. It would be more equivalent, not to going back to getting an MBA, because a lot of OTs do go back to get an MBA, and that would not count. But it would be more like if a physician went back to specialize in a medical procedure and and got an advanced certification, it's kind of like that, because the post-professional advanced doctorate in OT is like an advanced practice doctorate, but it's about practice. PhD in OT, it's like an advanced degree in OT. And of course, the bridge programs for OTAs, it's nothing but occupational therapy specific coursework, and it's not unrelated, like going in for an MBA or something.
All right, well, let me ask you this. Let's say an OT decides to go to school and become a PT. Okay,
That would not count because we've
all
limited.
right, so that's not going to count.
Only those 3 programs.
Only these 3
All right.
degrees right here.
Good enough. You know, we'll look, we're going to run it up the flagpole. They can either shoot it down or they can
But
accept it.
if you think that doubling it would possibly scale the chances, we have to keep that in mind.
Look,
Yeah,
what I can tell the board is they'll be happy with 1. They ask for 2. That's all.
All right, thank you.
all right.
And again, the contact hours language versus the CEU
yes.
language for the degree.
The way to
Okay.
look at it, Dr. Van, is that the education that they're getting, limited to these 3 options, are absolutely germane to the practice, way more than some of the courses they could be taking that even are accepted.
I couldn't catch all that, Darby.
Me
Yeah,
neither. I
it's
couldn't
kinda
hear it. I'm
garbled.
sorry.
So basically, the way to look at it is that the coursework that they're taking for these 3 programs is guaranteed to be germane to the practice of occupational therapy, and it's way more germane to the practice than some of the courses that they could take that would be approved.
It is, yeah,
Agreed.
Okay.
yeah.
Well, I'll make that case for you when we get there, but do me a favor. I'm going to need a copy of this document sometime soon.
Oh, yeah, I'm gonna get it to you today, Dr.
All
Van.
right.
All right, then we have section E. Okay, what, did we talk about this? We must have talked about this last time if I added it in green, that it was a discussion we had. So this would be something we need to.
Which it was kind of already in the rules. We
in our
just
current
discussed.
rules. And originally it's in our current rules, the fact that a person can earn CEUs for publishing in an OT journal. But it was not in the original draft of the changes to subchapter H. So this is new that we need to look at and see what you guys think. So what I wrote was a licensee may earn, continuing it, for publications appearing in peer-reviewed professional journals or chapter in a book on the theory or practice of OT. And I got this, I think, straight from the current rules. 4 contact hours will be earned per publication with a maximum of 4 earned in this manner per year. I may have added that in. Documentation shall consist of a copy of a letter of acceptance for publication by the journal or book publisher.
Okay, so I have some questions about this.
Darby, we
Darby can't hear you.
I don't know why.
It's it's kind of muffled. It's muffled, like you have something over the speaker. My microphone.
I don't. I'm sorry.
There it is.
It's better?
A little better, yeah.
Okay, so 2 things come to mind with this. One is that you're limiting the book on theory and practice of occupational therapy. So like, for instance, one of the book chapters that I was involved in was on learning disabilities, but it was in a neuro rehab book. So that technically wouldn't count, and I'm okay with that. I just want to like throw that out there. And then the second is we need to somewhere in here define when they get it. So like we worked on the book chapter and then like 2 years later it went to print. So what year would I get credit?
The year it was accepted for publication.
Okay, so that like, maybe we need to, I mean, I guess it says the letter of acceptance, but include, you know, for the, something maybe about when they would
Okay.
get it.
So the hours would be earned in the same year that
Letter
a
of ac-
letter of acceptance was received.
Okay.
Right, so in other words, like I couldn't submit my letter now, even though I got it like 10 years ago.
Nope.
You see what I'm saying? So like just a little bit of more specific information, because it gets real tricky of when it's accepted versus when it is published.
Published.
And that's what we're saying. If it's accepted for publication in the year you're using it, that's the year you get it. If you publish it 3 years later, you don't get it then, you got it the year it was accepted. So, and it has to be current. In other words, you can't go back and double dip, okay?
Dr. Van, do you know, like, I don't remember getting a letter of acceptance for a book chapter. Like the editors reached out to us every year and asked us if we were interested in revising it. And I don't have like technically a letter of acceptance. Maybe things have changed.
You know,
Well, I think if you ask the book publisher, when you submit this and they accept it, would you simply say, can you send me a letter confirming the acceptance of my revision to chapter 6 in the such and such manual of occupational therapy? And that way it'll be the year that letter's dated.
Okay.
yeah, that's even already in that section 443 with the CE broker, letter B, because now I've read it in detail. It talks about that if the licensee is, it's up to the licensee to obtain the documentation that work, and ask for it from the appropriate people.
Ingrid,
So one of the changes is going from 5 possible to 4, right?
Okay, yes, and why did I do that?
No, it's okay. I was just making sure that I understood that was one of the changes.
Probably because I like even numbers, but we can.
Ingrid, can you add at the last sentence? Okay, CEUs would be earned in the same year as the letter of acceptance is received for publication. No, the last, oh, sorry, you're adding something else.
I'm sorry. Okay. I was trying to add something about what Brenda mentioned. No, Darby mentioned about that we don't, obviously the chapter she wrote for a neuro rehab book would be awesome. So I just changed this to saying in a peer-reviewed journal or chapter in a book germane to the practice of occupational therapy. Would that kind of make it sort of vague enough to where a book like?
Don't make this too complicated. Don't make this too complicated.
Yes. But the last sentence, letter of acceptance is received for publication, because that's what we said.
I want you to think about this.
Yes.
You all have great ideas. You all have great discerning powers. You all can understand this. There are going to be clerks at CE Broker that are going to look at this, and if it's too complicated, you're liable to get them rejected and have to come back to us. And I'm not sure that's what you want to do, but just make it as clear cut and as simple as you can. And that way the clerks at CE Broker can make sure it gets done properly.
I guess I was hoping to make it sound a little bit more vague by saying in a book germane to the practice rather than in a book on the practice, like so that.
So who's going to determine if that book is germane?
I see.
I'm not trying to make it hard.
Yeah.
I'm trying to make it as simple as we can. And that's why if you just stick to standard continuing education, it becomes simple. You want to include all this other stuff, that's fine. But understand who's going to make that discernment. Are we going to have to say, okay, if you publish a book and it's germane, it's got to come before this committee to review? I thought that's what the business we were getting out of. But if you want to do it that way, we can make it happen. I'm just trying to make it easy. And so that this process works, because let's look at the person who waits till the last minute. They got 2 days and they got to get it in. And who's going to make the determination? We're going to have a special meeting at 3 o'clock in the morning on a Saturday to make sure that this gets happened, that we make sure that book is germane to OT because somebody forgot.
And they pay the late fee for for waiting.
Yeah, that's right.
I mean, they just have to be they have to take responsibility. And I don't know who's going to be responsible for this, if it's LOTA or if it's CE Broker, but
Well, that's why I'm saying if you leave this broad, and then it's going to come back to this committee every time. And I'm not sure that's what you want to do. But if you want to do it, look, I work Saturdays and Sundays all the time. I'm happy to call a meeting on a Saturday. Can you get a quorum to do it for somebody? That's fine with me.
Those are big questions. Okay, so, I mean, I agree that this is very amazing that we have occupational therapists that do this. We wouldn't have good books otherwise. I don't, I mean, like, I guess tell me how everybody feels. Like, do you feel like it's, do you see what Dr. Van's saying is we're trying to keep it as simple, but still give people the opportunity to have credit for their continuing education? Because there's plenty out there from AOTA, LOTA, MECOT, et cetera. And I know this is important. I'm not saying it isn't, but do we feel, again, this will be something that comes back almost every time? And I get a lot of, I mean, Brenda and Ingrid have been the main ones with me kind of going through each one. Is this germane, et cetera? And, you know, how do you guys feel about keeping this here? Are you okay if it goes away? Are you okay if we just kind of be super, I don't want to be super specific ever, but I think that's what he's saying. Like, you know, just sort of get that kind of feel.
I'm probably okay with not having it, if only because there are frankly very few OTs in the state of Louisiana that are publishing, so it's not going to affect a lot of people. However, there are some, and we actually want to encourage OTs to be part of research. I mean, that's like a bigger picture thing. If we keep it, I kind of feel like the wording is almost as much for the therapist, you know, for the therapist who has written something, you know, they read this and say, okay, it's only going to count if I get this into a peer-reviewed journal. It's not going to count if I get this into AARP Today newsletter. So it's only going to count if it's kind of related to occupational therapy practice. So almost more like for the licensee to understand what that don't bother turning it in unless it's in a peer-reviewed journal that's relevant to OT.
Well, again, the book is different, but the book's different than the journals.
Right.
I feel like it's important to keep it if there is a question, it comes back to OTAC, and correct me if I'm wrong, we would not need a quorum, right, to approve or disapprove it?
No, you would need a quorum.
Like the courses that we approved?
This is, you have to have a quorum to conduct business.
If that's what you're gonna, if you're gonna change what's going on with CE Broker or whatever, if you're agreeing to that, yeah.
It's not like the courses we approved, Amy, that you sent us by email?
We're getting out of that business.
Yeah, we're not doing it. Yeah, we're going away from that. That's the whole point of doing this. So no, it would have to be business. It would have to be business from this point forward. So every time it came to you, so you should be not having anything come to you very often at all. I mean, there should just be obviously the occasional questions. I mean, that's what the OTAC's for, but it shouldn't be on a consistent basis.
But it would only come to us if CE Broker has a question, correct?
That's my understanding.
But remember, then that's going to delay the credits. Because let's go back to look at the big picture. I know you want to encourage research. I know you want to encourage publication. Continuing education has a more, how do I want to say, less laudable, if you will, but more concrete, earthier, if you will, need. It's to keep the level of education among the largest number of practitioners at a reasonable level to protect the public. Okay. Now, I understand you want to give people this credit, but if they're going to submit it to CE Broker and CE Broker says, we can't tell, you're going to have a meeting. If they've waited till the last minute, they're gonna say, well, you should have had a meeting sooner, okay? I don't want you to be criticized. I want you to make this simple. But if you want to do it this way, look, we'll have meetings anytime you need them to have, okay? The key here is that it needs to be simple and concrete and not difficult to discern for the average clerk that's processing this data.
I have a question or just a comment. Maybe I'm off base, but going back to that statement that things have to be approved by AOTA, LOTA, or NBCOT, how would this fall into those categories? Because we talked about the fieldwork educator, the fieldwork educator getting that certificate from the university who is approved by AOTA, ACODE. So that's where that falls into that category. But how would this fall into one of those three?
No, not that I see. And, you know, we can establish a list of journals. If we adopt this, we can establish a list of journals. And then we can submit that to MBCE broker and they'll know how to deal with it. Once you start talking about textbooks and you leave it loose, textbook that could be related to occupational therapy, then you're going to have to approve each textbook. And I just think that's counterproductive. But if you want to do it, I'll sell it to the board. The board may shoot it down. But again, I think you need to think about what you're doing to make this. Remember, this is so few people, you know, we're talking about so few people that it may not be worth it to you all.
Yeah. Michelle Allison, you have your hand raised.
Yeah, I'm kind of thinking not to have that in there for the few people that it would be. And that way, that person would then take it upon themselves to get LOTA, AOTA, NBCOT, or somebody to approve what they've done, and it keeps it out of us. Does that make sense?
Yeah, well, if we remove it though, it just wouldn't be a way that they could earn CEUs. And that's okay. Again, I started this out by saying it's really not a lot of people that this would affect. So
right.
If it's too complicated, then I guess I think we should remove it.
I agree with that. How's everybody else feel? Anybody else feel negatively about that? Removing it?
My gut feeling is that the same people who are doing the research and writing the chapters in the books are already doing continuing education. So
I agree.
It's probably even a moot point for them.
Probably, I agree.
I agree.
I think it sounds okay. So we'll cross that out. Whoops, I hate when I do that. I'll get the rest of this to you, Dr. Van.
Okay.
All right.
That's it. We done the rest.
Oh, yay. Okay. So, motion to pass the subchapter H with the, amendments and things that we've placed forth on it and all the different corrections that we have.
What we were specifically subchapter H,
Continuing professional.
67 and section, that's it actually, section 1967.
Okay.
What we changed.
All right. So a motion to the changes and roll back up so I can say it out loud.
Can I ask one more question? Can I get clarification for one thing? So we're saying that you cannot get any continuing ed for any publication, right? Even though it was in there before that you could. Okay, just making sure. Understood that correctly. All righty.
So, all right. So a motion for changes of subchapter H, continuing professional education, 1967. You said
section 1967. Yeah.
Section 1967.
I guess the 1960. You know what? Just say the whole thing because 1967.
Subchapter H.
The whole thing about the 15 contact hours.
Subchapter H. Yeah. Let's just leave it at that. With the motion to change subchapter H, continuing professional education. Got a second?
Second.
Oh, who was that?
Darby.
Darby seconds that. Anyone with a nay? All right, motion passes. Woohoo! I'm gonna celebrate on that one. But listen, I'm gonna need about a 5-minute break, guys. And then we've got just let's see, 3 more things, but the last 2 are very quick. So I just need about a 5-minute break, if that's okay with everybody, and we'll come right back.
Do you need to continue sharing, Ingrid?
No, I'm gonna stop the share now.
Okay.
All right, Kelly, do you need to share anything for the next one?
Yes, probably so.
Okay, all right, so you can, if you can
Same
give Kelly
document, but I have it highlighted.
There you go. All right, thank you. All right, 5 minutes, so it's 11:46. We'll be back in 11:51.
Hello.
Hey.
Why is that on Zoom?
Huh?
It's on Zoom too.
You're on Zoom?
We're talking on Zoom.
Why are we on Zoom?
Are you muted?
Okay, everybody. It's 11:51. All right, let's see if we got everybody back in. Thank you. Sometimes those breaks are just necessary. All right. So next on our agenda is Kelly Brandon. So whenever we get questions in, sometimes they become like sort of a scope of practice question and things like that. So what Kelly has kind of done is kind of talked through some of them and looked up certain things about different questions that have come into us, and has some larger questions for the OTAC to kind of look at. What I guess my thoughts are with having her kind of present this and put it forward is just, it's another area where you may want to look at the rules. It doesn't mean all the discussion has to happen today. I mean, we saw how long subchapter 8 took, but so we just essentially want to let her kind of present I think she has like two main subjects that are big ones. And just with sort of changes in well, the whole world at this point, obviously. And so it's just some things that maybe need to be looked at. And so I guess my thoughts are afterwards, after she's kind of through with talking about some of it, is just to either a motion that we just sort of further research it and begin to talk about changes of rules, or maybe there's a simpler solution, which is why we have Dr. Mann on here, which is awesome. And so that's kind of where we are. And I'm going to be quiet now. And Kelly Brandon, it's your floor.
Okay. So the main two areas are referral questions and like supervision and the role of the OTA questions. So with referral, one of the things that has come up is, and if you can y'all see the screen? You know, everybody can see it.
Yes.
You got it up.
It's a little small. Can you make it like bigger? Sorry, I'm blind and I don't
A
have.
little bit more, Kelly. Thank you.
here.
Great. Thank you.
Is that good?
It's wonderful.
Okay, so I like colors too. So the question is in blue. And this has come up a couple of times, but I just chose one of the questions. Is a formal signed referral required from the approved provider list for an OT to conduct an initial evaluation? So the information in the rules about an OT entering the case is in two parts of the rules. One under the definition of occupational therapy, and then one actually under the scope of practice, or the standards of practice for the referral section. So on the definition of OT, it says the OT may enter a case for the purposes that, well, y'all can read it, of providing consultation and indirect services and evaluating an individual for the need of service. And it says that it does not need a referral from one of these providers if it's for prevention, wellness, and education. That's under the OT part, but under the referral section, in the standards of practice, it says that the OT enters the case, and this is all it says about it, at the request of a Louisiana licensed physician, dentist, podiatrist, optometrist, advanced practitioner. So, so entering the case really became the question of what that means. Is it, do they have to have a referral from one of these providers to just do a screening, an initial evaluation, or is it to then provide, you know, make it, if they qualify, to make a plan? That was kind of the question that was coming up. The other question was, if a formal signed referral is required, and we did respond to this with an interpretation, they were getting, they were trying to use, if the PT had put in his or her evaluation that they would benefit from OT, as a way of a referral to get an evaluation or a screening for OT.
Stop. Can I stop you 1 minute, please?
Yes.
Who responded to who?
Who responded to who? Amy, you
You
want to?
said,
Okay.
we gave a response, and I want to know who's the we that gave the response and to whom did you respond?
We had a question requesting if that was an okay way to have OT or to start an OT process of entering a case, I guess would be the phrase that you could use.
Okay, so
And we ultimately said, no, you needed a doctor's order.
Right, and it was right here. This was the recommendation.
okay, but what I want to get to is a larger issue, is that if you're responding as an individual,
Oh, no.
I don't care. If you're responding for the OT advisory committee, I would urge you to not do that until you bring it to the full committee before you send the response. And also let us give us an advance notice of what it's going to say so I can run it by legal to make sure we're not overstepping any other bounds, okay?
Absolutely. Okay.
I agree with your answer. I'm discussing methodology. This is all this is about is methodology. So please understand, I don't have a problem with your answer. I just want to make sure I don't want you guys to be held out to have done something that the board wasn't able to back you up on because we weren't involved.
Okay. So that would be in the future, Darby, whenever these scope of practice questions come, and you usually we have like Kelly, I think it's Kelly and Carolyn and
Kim.
Kim, yes,
Kim.
I'm sorry, Kim. They sort of look through and research what's in our rules and everything, that just like what she's doing, what she has to present here, to kind of talk it through if it becomes a larger question. And if it's something that's easily answered, that's definitely in the Practice Act, I'm sorry, not the Practice Act, the rules and regulations that's, definitely defined right there. Those are easier to answer and just can't get around it. That's what it says. Those are okay to go ahead and answer back like the licensing analyst that sends questions, right? Or do you want everything to go through you?
No, I just think if you feel it's a simple, straightforward answer, just notify and but if there's some concern that it's not black and white like the rules say,
right,
it ought to come through us it'll come through the formal committee process.
Okay, and that's what these two are. So we're on board. We're doing what we need to do. Yes. Okay.
Yeah, that one seemed pretty straightforward. I mean, it was on the PT's plan of care. The other parts really about the referral, it almost seemed like a contradiction, because in one area, the only statement about a referral is that they can only enter a case from a referral from these providers. But then under the definition, which I had honestly not even seen until recently, under the definition of OT, where it says they can provide consultation and indirect service without the need of a referral from these providers. So the question is, in every case, or in every other case where this doesn't apply, prevention, wellness, and education, does an OT have to have a referral to screen, to do an initial evaluation from one of these providers? That's because there are scenarios that we can think of that, Amy had a couple of scenarios. I've had scenarios where people have asked me to screen or evaluate a child, not to treat them, to just see if they needed further services. So I've looked at other practice acts. I looked at Texas, and they do have that. They have to have a referral to treat, but not to provide an evaluation every time, depending on the condition.
We just have to make sure we're not like interchanging the word screen and evaluate, because our rules do specifically say that we can screen without a referral. That's already stated elsewhere.
Okay. What's the definition of a screen? That came up yesterday. Let's go to that.
Yeah, great question.
Yeah, we talked about that yesterday too.
Did y'all address the issue? Is this about for payment purposes? And because I got a similar question, and I explained to the rather entrepreneurial OT in this matter that She was upset because she was having to put diagnoses on her billing because the doctors wouldn't give her a diagnosis. And I said, well, now you're practicing medicine and that's a violation of Medical Practice Act if you're making diagnosis. And I think the key here is that if this is about billing insurance companies, they're going to have a larger global issue than what we decide here. If this is about how you operate your practice and if you're on a cash basis, or if you're an employee and let's say your employee decides we're going to have a screening for making sure everybody's got no problems with the hand function. We're going to make sure we're going to screen for trigger fingers and all our employees because it's important. Okay. Whatever reason that might be. I think that's not a problem. But if you're opening up your OT clinic and you're getting referrals to do whatever, and the way it was presented to me, well, it was to treat and evaluate. Okay. What are you treating for? Well, I'm treating for such and such. I said, is that the diagnosis for why the doctor sent them to you? Well, I don't know. That's just the diagnosis I'm putting down. I said, well, you're not empowered to diagnose. Well, what if the doctor doesn't send it to me? I said, then you can't provide the service. And I use the example of a physician sending somebody for a mammogram. While a radiologist is going to read that mammogram and interpret that mammogram, by Stark laws, that radiologist cannot provide the diagnosis for that mammogram. The ordering, referring physician must do that. So the hospital will say, Dr. Collada, I can't do that mammogram for your patient until you give me a diagnosis. Likewise, if you send a patient for a CBC or a blood test or urinalysis, the lab needs a diagnosis. And the issue here is that as good as you all are, you are not empowered under the law to make diagnoses. So again, I'm concerned that we have to talk about, is this about payment? Is this about a wellness program that's part of your hospital where you work? I think we have to really clarify all of these things to make the right answer for these people.
So it is a definite talking point that must go through a process and look at everything that's written about it. Kelly, is there is there a definition for screening on here? I know we were kind of looking at that real quick.
There's not.
No. Okay. So there's not even a definition for the word screening.
That I can find now. There again.
Right. Well, there's screening methods shall be
appropriate.
But there's no definition as to what that is.
Interview, observation, testing, and record review. So, it has what it could include. It doesn't, but which you.
But is that entering
the case? Too specific.
Right. But is that entering the case? Because it says in is it the practice law? Practice Act, it says entering the case, you require all those levels of people that could give us an order, a script or whatever. So it is important to get this right. I think that a lot of people have been operating off of the assumption that a screening's okay without a referral, and that may still be the case, but it may need some more definition or thought and conversation with, look at other states to see what they define as a screen. Because I literally could probably look at someone most of the time and say, and ask the question, have they had a decline? A few questions that I could ask and look at the person and say, oh, I really think they probably could use some occupational therapy.
Right.
Did anybody look at section 4907 of the rules?
4907.
That's what I'm trying to find that right now. 4907.
It's entitled screening.
Right.
Yeah. You talking about this?
Yeah. Yes. That is that. Right.
Right. So, and this is where Ingrid's talking about that they can screen independently or as members of a team. And then our question was, well, what's considered screening? Because that's where I think the contradiction comes in of they can enter a case, like Amy's saying, yet they can screen, but they can't enter. So what does enter a case mean?
Because D tells us what a screening is, letter D right there. It can include interview, observation, testing, and record review.
So testing, which could be part of an evaluation.
Right.
So
Right.
essentially, it's saying that, an occupational therapist can screen a patient, and without a referral, the therapist decides, I think this person could use therapy, then they cannot do anything else until they've communicated with a physician and gotten a referral, and then they do a full in-depth evaluation after that.
Okay,
Okay,
so enter the case means,
Begin therapy and
because then so then we have referral here. So that would mean that they would have to screen, and then they could get a referral and then do the evaluation.
Right.
They cannot do the evaluation without a referral.
but
right.
the word testing bothers me, I guess, in that thought. Because what do you mean by testing?
It's my understanding that you can do a testing, but the difference between entering the case and screening is
Darby, we can't hear you, babe.
I don't know what to do. Is that better?
A little.
let me ask you something, Darby. Are you using the cell phone or is your cell phone connected to the internet?
No, I'm actually on my laptop right now, but I keep kind of switching back and forth.
Okay, well, the internet connection gives you better audio than your cell phone.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm on the internet right now.
That sounds
It's
good.
better.
You do sound
Sounds
better.
good.
So the difference is the testing and
Not
evaluate,
all
like
the way around.
a standardized test can be done for screening. You technically enter the case with treatment. I always thought that was the distinction. So like you can, without, like if somebody needs a screening, say a child at school and a mom calls or a teacher calls, I can do a standardized test. I can basically screen. I can do a questionnaire, a standardized test, whatever, but I don't enter the case until I have a prescription, then I can do treatment.
Okay, but that's kind of a little bit different than what we were saying before. I mean, that's how I would like it to be, that you could do a screening and an evaluation, but not enter to treat until you have a referral. That makes sense to me. But the way it's written, the enter the case is here at the referral section, and then we're getting into evaluation.
But the word testing and screening allows you to do a test.
Exactly.
A standardized test or a questionnaire.
Well, but it doesn't, but testing could also be manual muscle testing.
Correct. Manual
So
muscle
you're-
testing, goniometer, like everything.
Balance.
Yes.
Okay.
I think it's smart to keep screening broad like it is, and even if you have done a standardized test or one piece of a manual muscle test, just enough to determine, yeah, you know what, this person could benefit. Then you get your referral, then you do your in-depth evaluation. You do, with a screening, it should be just enough to determine whether you think this person's going to benefit from OT.
But Darby, the way I understood you saying it is, should you do an evaluation without the referral? Or just a screening?
How in-depth is the testing, Darby, I guess is what, because where does it cross the line with I manual muscle tested and I'm now going to put that in my evaluation as to what I saw,
Evaluation is defined in the rules as well.
Right.
As the process of collecting and interpreting data through direct observation, interview, record review, or testing of a client.
Which could also
Be part of screening.
Testing and the screening, yeah. But
There's
that's
obviously
without a
overlap.
referral.
There's obviously overlap, but screening is the intent of doing just enough to figure out if they're going to benefit from OT. At that
I
point,
think it's a cursory overview of whether or not they're appropriate, and then you enter the case based on a referral for actual treatment, intervention, and more thorough assessments.
Okay, so at
And
the end there, Leslie, you said and more thorough assessment. So are we saying though, because I'm still kind of hearing two different things, that entering the case is on one hand after the screening before full evaluation, or is entering the case after screening evaluation before treatment?
Would that be a charge to the insurance difference? Like I screened versus I'm
I don't think there
evaluating?
is a charge anymore for screening. I didn't think
But
so.
evaluation there is.
So it has to be an evaluation. So I don't think, I mean, a screening is not a billable in most places from my knowledge.
Plus
So
you don't have a
technically-
referral. Mhm.
Right, so
Without a
technically
referral, I don't
after
think you can
you,
bill.
Yeah,
after
so
you
you'd have to have an
screen-
actual prescription and then be able to, for it to be billable.
so you screen and you could basically almost do the same things as an evaluation, but if you're gonna start billing, it becomes, I need a doctor's order and and then I full on evaluate and write it up.
Yes.
But I don't know that we want to make it billable the question, right? Because of what are the situations that billable isn't the problem? I'm just wanting to know if we need a referral to do an evaluation, regardless of billing.
All right, if you read under the definition of occupational therapy on page 13 of the rules, it says the occupational therapist may enter a case for the purposes of providing consultation and indirect services and evaluating an individual for the need of services. So if we go later on, if we say a referral is necessary to enter the case, then this is where enter the case is defined, and this is what you have to follow. Now, if you want to change that, we can show, ask the board to change it. But again, and it goes on to say, and it is important that you hear this, prevention, wellness, and education-related services shall not require referral. However, in workers' compensation injuries, pre-authorization shall be required by the employer and/or workers' compensation insurance or provider. So implementation of direct occupational therapy to individuals for their specific medical condition or conditions shall be based on a referral or order from a physician, dentist, podiatrist, advanced practitioner. So again, I think, it's one is different than the other, and I think they're clear enough to say what entry in it is now in the rule. But if you want to make a change, let's see what the change you want to make it, and we'll run it up the flagpole as we change the rules.
So what would be your change that you would want, Kelly? What
Well,
would make your?
I really am just trying to get clarification to know if there should be a change, y'all's interpretation of
I have another little bump to add on top of this.
what that looks like, because it sounds, until you get the question, it's a little bit more tricky, but go ahead, Amy.
Right. So my next question is, because I know like in nursing homes and things like that, they've allowed occupational therapy assistants to do screenings. If we're saying the word testing, evaluations, is that okay for them to basically do enough until I know they can tell the difference if somebody needs it or doesn't need it, but I guess that just want to make sure we're agreeing where we're agreeing.
Well, CODAs can do testing, and as long as they're giving the OT has to interpret the testing. But screening is different from evaluation. So screening is clearly allowed in our rules without a referral. It's not the same thing as an evaluation. A screening is kind of like you're doing just enough testing and interviewing and observing to decide that they need further therapy, and then you get the referral for the eval.
Okay, so are we all saying then, and I understand the difference between.
Kelly, wasn't our big question entering a case?
Yes.
Wasn't that also confusing?
Yeah. So is entering the case the step between screening and evaluation?
I've always understood, and maybe it's just the way that me and my colleagues were reading it, that you could enter the case to evaluate, but not to treat. And I know in terms of like when you get into like school-based practice, everyone that I know has that same interpretation of it. And that's all the words I got for that.
So because I know in school-based practice, we only had to have a referral to treat. We could evaluate. So that's what the question is. So that's why I don't know if there needs to be a rule change. I just needed to get your opinion, everyone's opinion on what that terminology meant. Ingrid, I understand your opinion of it. Or your interpretation is that it means you need to have a referral after the screening before you do an evaluation. Is that correct?
I guess that is how
Okay.
I would read it, yeah.
Okay. But I was hearing a little bit different.
Yeah, I can see that there's other interpretations, and you're right about the fact that in one place it clearly states you don't need a referral to do the evaluation. In another place it says you do, so maybe one or the other needs to change.
Well, I mean, I think also just being groomed by Dr. Van, like keeping it vague helps people do what they need to do in their situation.
Right.
So, you have the school system, you have this, like, there's technically no right or wrong as long as you don't provide treatment without the prescription.
Right.
That's how I interpret this.
I would concur.
Yeah, me too.
Kelly?
Okay, so can we answer questions for people when they have that question? I mean,
Again, what you don't always understand sometimes is the unasked question. And I often find, when I'm trying to teach our people how to answer questions about licensing, and I said, okay, so do you know this fact about the case? Are they asking that? Well, they didn't say anything about it. I said, well, did you ask them? No, well, I didn't. So again, I don't know, having not heard the original question, but your interpretation of the question, if you want to tell me what the original question is, maybe I can make you an example to understand what I'm trying to say.
okay. Well,
For example, if somebody says, is it all right for me to look at a patient without a referral? Well, what do you mean by look? Do you mean by screening? Because screening is defined. You can do that without a look. So again, can I treat a patient? Well, no, you have to have a referral to treat a patient. Well, how do I know if the patient needs treatment? Well, you do the screen. Okay. So again, it's not often, and we wrestle, and just so you'll know, we wrestle with these things because we get questions from doctors and we turn them into advisory opinions. And that's why I'm saying sometimes you get a tough question like this. If the question is formally sent to us in writing, we give an official answer for the board. And then that way they can go to the bank on the answer, but we parse every line and sentence and word in the request to make sure we answer the question exactly as it was presented to us. Now, what I love is when we go ahead and I say, I'll send back, so do you have anything else you want to elaborate this question on? And say, no, we put together an advisory opinion and answer the question, send them a letter. And they said, well, you didn't address this. I said, you didn't ask me to. So I understand where you're trying to go. And it's sometimes best if you let us answer it together with you for the agency instead of trying to do it by yourself.
well, this was one of the questions. Is a formal signed referral required for an OT to conduct an initial evaluation? That was one question.
So at
Okay.
its core, it seems like the answer is yes. If
That's
you're
easy.
saying the word evaluation.
Okay. So entering the case would mean prior to the initial evaluation.
No, entering the case is for the purposes of providing consultation and indirect service and evaluating an individual for the need for services. With prevention, wellness, and education-related services shall not require a referral.
Really, the answer to the first question, Kelly, would be if a referral is not needed if it's already deemed that the patient needs occupational therapy, because that would skip the screening process. So technically they could if they haven't been screened.
I'm a little confused.
I was gonna say, you look confused.
I'm sorry.
So the question is, do they need a referral to do an evaluation?
Mhm. Right.
Yes.
Not if they haven't been screened. So if they don't know that the patient needs occupational therapy, they can technically do a screening without a referral.
But they can't do the full initial evaluation.
Correct.
So
That almost seems contradictory to what we said minutes ago.
Mhm.
I know
However, a screening and what it's defined as kind of sounds like an initial evaluation, but you can stop it at that point, like Ingrid said, where you're like, okay, look, this is obvious that they need some, therapy.
You also
Kelly-
said the magic word earlier, screening services are not covered and they're not reimbursable. So, the hospital is not gonna, if let's say you're working in a hospital. The hospital will say, well, we don't screen people if the doctor or the treating physician wants to have the occupational therapist, they consult us and we come in and evaluate and treat. If you're operating your own private clinic, you may want to do some screening for work, but you're not going to get paid for it by anybody unless the patient wants to pay you for it, cash. But then if you find somebody that needs help, you can say, okay, take this to your doctor, and if they agree with me, they can order this and we can treat you and take care of you. But again, it's
about
really the
billing?
environment in which you practice and how you plan to get paid is going to make a lot of this different.
I mean, I guess I'm just trying to figure out, okay, if it's about the billing part of it or the non-billing. For example, if I know of a clinic that wants to get OT evaluations and interventions and do pro bono, just me doing it for free, do I still have to get a doctor's referral to evaluate?
Do a screening?
To evaluate.
Yes, you would still need,
Yes.
if you're doing evaluations, yes. If you're doing screenings, no.
Okay.
Kelly, show us the
Semantic.
first question again, because again, I think we want to make sure we're answering that question, not the questions that come up, that someone can
I have
further.
got to go to another meeting, so I'm sorry, but good luck with this.
Thanks, Ingrid.
Okay, so can y'all see the screen? I'm not sure which screen I'm sharing at this point.
Yes, is a formal signed referral required for an OT to conduct an initial evaluation? By calling it an evaluation, then yes, you
yeah.
have to
Yes.
enter the case as with the physician's referral. Or,
Yes.
the list. But if you were just to initially open the case with a screening, it is semantics, honestly. It sounds like the difference between one word versus the other. And yes, billing does matter, like Dr. Van was saying. I mean, they're the ones who care what's getting paid for, okay?
Mhm.
And so if you're screening versus evaluation, they're gonna want an evaluation. Well, the evaluation requires a referral from the list.
And what,
So in my opinion, number one is a yes.
Okay, so let's look at the second question.
Can y'all see it?
Yeah, sorry.
So this is the one about the plan of care. This was just another
Right.
example. The referring physician receives and signs off on the PT plan of care that includes the recommendation for OT. Can this be considered a referral?
No, a referral is a different, a request is a request for services from the physician to the OT. So the physician or treating APRN, PA would have to say, okay, I'm requesting, I'm referring this patient to OT for therapy and evaluation or initial evaluation and therapy. But again, one document doesn't serve the purpose of the other.
And we felt like that was an easy answer, but just wanted to run it by and make sure. Okay, so the answer, we don't need to do anything else with the referrals. We understand that entering the case really means to do an initial evaluation. Regardless, you need to have a referral.
Right.
Is that what everybody's saying?
Mhm.
You
Okay.
sure you feel comfortable walking away, Kelly? Because I know you have questions.
see, I just keep popping in my mind, like in the school system.
I think that's a different animal, though.
It is a
mean,
different
all
animal,
that.
but I mean, if you look at this, it's, I mean, I don't know, where do you draw the line? Because like in the school system, you'll get, they'll ask you to do an evaluation and you may or may, it's just part of the whole process of getting that child services. But
I mean, I think in the pediatric world, it's just a whole different animal altogether because I
Yeah.
mean, it's just, we see kids for so many various reasons that don't have that medical diagnosis like the adult world talks about, that
Right.
it's just going to be, I don't know. I just,
All right, well, let's go back to this. Is it a school-based APRN that's requesting an evaluation?
The school system requests that as part of their evaluation process, they ask an OT to do an evaluation.
Well, that would be considered a screening if you're doing it in that situation.
And then I know
A school system does not practice medicine. A school system does not have the authority to order testing and evaluations. That's why I'm asking, does the school have a school-based nurse or a physician who's present to do that?
no.
No,
It doesn't.
which is why it becomes complicated. If you do an eval and say you're recommending services, it then becomes very onerous and complicated. And I think it needs to happen, but to get the physician referral to agree that the child can receive the services.
Well, then I think the thing to do is we need to say, for purposes of definitions, we can add that, or you can advise people that you're only doing a screening when the school asks for an evaluation, because you cannot enter an evaluation until you have the referral from a physician or authorized referrer according to the rules. So at APRN practicing it, the nurse could, and the school could do it, but the principal can't. Okay.
Or the word testing, you're doing testing.
So screening can include testing.
Mhm. So, I mean, testing is your evaluations that you do, the Brunex and the, like all the different kinds of things that you would have to go through. That's testing, obviously, but it's not something that required necessarily a referral. Until you've deemed it necessary for treatment. That's a different animal.
Right.
Yes.
Well, I mean, let's say that you may not need to do anything. The screen may be negative and nothing needs to be done.
Right. Okay.
There might be an exception in the school system. I'd have to look a little bit further.
I think there is a Louisiana law thing that has to
I
do.
think so.
There is something else too. Yeah. It's not in our practice law. I mean, practice act.
Well, that's why if you send these things to us, we'll do all the research way in advance. I mean, honestly, I think this is the point. Either it got to come to the committee, and if we could have gotten these documents in advance, it could have had our attorneys ready to answer it and have done all the research. But I mean, that's how we go about answering these questions. I mean, we do a lot of research in both the areas of law that we control and the areas of law that are outside. And we've been getting a number of questions from the school-based clinics about what we can do, and they don't like the answers they're getting from us. So it sounds like they're turning to you on them, and you guys are getting caught in the crossfire.
Well, we will, okay, so we at least have somewhat of a definition to walk away from. If it's something that continues to come up, then I definitely think we should throw it back to or do you guys think that we should go ahead and get this one looked at by the board and the lawyer and all that kind of stuff? Do you think that's something we need to open that can of worms for?
If you want to give me this document that you're showing on the screen, I can't get it for Monday's meeting. That's a dead issue. I may even be able to get it, but I can get you the lawyers and everything together. We can do our research in advance, and we come back to you with the answers that the board we would recommend to the board giving if it need be. And then you can say, well, we think we ought to do a rule change. But doing it the way you're doing it is fine with me. But understand, I think you're getting caught in some crossfire because the school-based people that are talking to us have got an answer that they didn't like, and now they're trying to put you in the middle.
Okay. All right. Well, I guess let's talk about this last one, Kelly, and then we will
Hey,
Go ahead.
I've got to jump out because we've got graduation ceremony things on, so I've got to jump out. But
Okay, let me make sure we still have a quorum. I think we do. 1, 2, 3, 4. Was Leslie still here?
yes.
Amy, I'm gonna have to go as well.
Okay. As long as we have
I'm here.
5.
Need
Yeah, Michelle's
5.
here. Okay, we're good. We're good.
Okay. And I'm gonna make this.
Aye.
All right.
So the other part was the supervision roles and responsibilities. Okay, this is one of the questions. Recently moved back to Louisiana, having trouble finding the updated information on your website regarding how many direct and indirect supervision hours per month are required for an OTA. I also can't seem to locate a supervision log to print, so if you could please send one over to me, that would be great. So according to the rules, after OTA has been out for 2 years, there's no specific amount of supervision required except for certain settings. So that was kind of the question. Does there need to be some kind of rule about that? Does there need to be anything else added about it? But it just, because it only talks about home health, early intervention, school system, and I think long-term psychiatric setting.
Again, if you want me to put together a formal response with Dolores, I will, and we'll get back to you at the next meeting.
Do you think that needs to be done, Kelly?
What do you, I mean,
Or
what
is
do
it
y'all-
just you want to, or is it just you want to talk about an interpretation at this point? I mean, what do you?
I mean, I just wanted other people's opinion, I guess, to see if.
I have a question. So Kelly,
Yes.
we talked about this, what, back in May or something? My question is, so we haven't responded to them. How are they interpreting? You know, what is their interpretation? They're obviously still working, you know?
Right.
How are they
Without a-
responding?
Well, and that was unfortunate because we couldn't have our last meeting and then, you know, all the things. So.
Right, I know, but it's like, so they're still waiting. How are they proceeding, basically?
You know, I know in some settings such as rehab, skilled facilities, outpatient settings, insurance has, of course, is a payment source, but they dictate how often and it's, you know, Medicare has every 2 weeks, outpatient has every 6 visits. And so they kind of dictate when they have to have that face-to-face with the patient, actually, with the OTA. And so I'm wondering, I guess I'm not sure what she's asking in terms of that.
It's probably when the insurance doesn't dictate it.
Okay.
So
Could
Kelly,
be a bad assumption, but
Kelly, could you get more information from them? Like what Kim was talking about, and like how they're interpreting a little bit more about like the setting and the procedures that are doing now? Then we can look at the rules for an interpretation. And then if we need to get Dr. Van involved with the legal team for the response, at that point, we can look at the rules to see if and what we need to change based on how this plays out.
Okay. And Amy, do you have that? I mean, I don't know.
I should. I'll have to look back.
I
Yeah.
only get the question. I don't know who they are.
Yeah, I should have that.
Okay. So the second question was along the same lines. I don't know, Amy, if you would even want to discuss this 6 visitor every 2 week scenario or not. No.
No, I think what we were saying right there about billing earlier, it really is who kind of determines, or it's best practice, whatever's better, you know, whatever's the least kind of thing, least time frame is what I'm trying to say. I think it's how the rules read, is what we said, or what we looked at.
And so then virtual supervision, if that is allowed, because according, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna, I mean, you know, things have changed. We've got telehealth now. We have the ability to have these Zoom meetings. I don't necessarily, if it's a face-to-face meeting with my COTA that doesn't require me to put hands on a patient, I don't see why you and I can't have a face-to-face conversation like this. But when it involves, I need to be there for treatment of the client, the patient, yeah, I need to be there.
It's mostly the ones that have less than 2 years where the rules state that, for example, 25% of those clients to whom she has administered close client care supervision. And the definition of close client care is face-to-face observation. And then the definition of face-to-face is in the physical presence.
okay,
So
well, let's
that's
talk
where-
about let me talk a little bit about face-to-face in the world today. And you have to, I have to split hairs because the law and the orders and the rules do. Right now, there is no prohibition on that supervision being done face-to-face because of the declared emergency and the governor's orders regarding this emergency. So you can provide telehealth services in that situation. However, you would still be held to the same responsibility that you would have, as Amy alluded to. If I need to do hands-on, probably not going to be able to do it in that case. Just like we tell doctors, yeah, I understand you have a computer and I understand your computer is programmed to give you 13 areas of examination to provide a high level of coding. But if you're doing telemedicine and you've documented that you did a pelvic or a rectal examination, you're going to be in trouble because the technology does not provide you a way of doing that. So you have to still practice good medicine within the limits of the technology. Now, when the emergency is over, there are no rules for telehealth, and there's no provision for you to practice telehealth after the emergency is over. We are probably going to have to draft these rules for the provision of telehealth by non-MDs, because we only have rules for telemedicine, which and only doctors practice telemedicine. Everybody else practices telehealth. So again, from our perspective, yes, we're going to need rules, but we don't have them. And right now you can do anything you want, provided that the technology allows you to provide the services that are needed. If you can't provide the needed services, then you probably shouldn't be doing it by telehealth.
Well, the question was more about supervision over telehealth, virtual. So, and with it saying face-to-face. So the emergency order would also apply to the supervision requiring physical presence.
Right. So you could do it by telehealth.
The supervision.
But if the supervision required that the higher level supervisor evaluate physically something by laying hands on it, then it can't be done. So you're still bound by the limits of the technology. Yes, you can supervise, but if supervise requires, touching or laying hands on or doing a test that physically presence is required, then you can't. And again, telemedicine and telehealth are evolving. For example, now many of the insurance companies give families that are in their insurance plans appliance kits that allow things like otoscopes and stethoscopes to be electronically affixed to the telemedicine device so that the doctor can literally see what the tympanic membranes look like in the child at 2 o'clock in the morning if need be. So again, I think that you have to answer that question in the light of within the limits of the technology you can supervise. But again, it's splitting hairs because technology is going to evolve, and that's why you have to say it that way.
So if it's determined that the supervision can be done effectively over telehealth, then the Emergency Act would kind of override the requirement of physical presence. Is that what you're saying? Okay.
Right. But if this person needs a concrete answer, I would draft this up and present it to the board for their final approval.
Okay. Okay. Okay, the only other thing, which kind of goes back to the referral thing where we said that an OTA can do a screening. The only time that OTA is mentioned in the entire OT process is in the intervention implementation stage, that's when they pretty much can participate. It says implementation of direct OT. Let's see, OTs shall implement the program according to the program plan. OTAs may assist in program implementation under the supervision of and in consultation with the supervising OT. So even though AOTA provides guidelines on what an OTA can and can't do, our rules only refer to OTAs in the intervention implementation stage. Every other verbiage throughout the entire process is OT, 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 not OT practitioner, only OT.
Yeah, I understand. That's what it says.
So that was kind of confusing. It's mainly confusing. I mean, once we get the question, obviously, but also when we teach it.
Okay, well, think about what is the purpose of the OTA?
To assist in the in the entire OT process in collaboration with and under the supervision of an OT.
So we would want the higher level person
Mhm.
to be doing the plan of care, the evaluation to determine that plan of care, and then delegating the work of that plan of care to the OTA.
Right.
Okay, so I think that meets exactly what we talk about when we say they can participate in implementation of the plan of care.
Well, but they can also participate in the evaluation stage, the outcome stage, the planning stage.
How do they participate in evaluation?
They can be delegated specific assessments that they've deemed had service competency.
Where is that in the rules?
Well, that's my point.
Okay.
It's something that is AOTA allows, it's in their guidelines, but it's not really written in our rules, but it is happening. I mean, that's OTAs they do participate in all.
Okay. It may be that we need, and that's why I wish I had gotten this document a day or two ago. And in the future, we're going to have to ask for these kind of documents in advance of the meeting and enough time to determine whether I need to get my lawyers involved and get their research ready to roll, because I think a lot of these things, and I'm going to turn, when you send me this document, I'm going to turn a lot of these things into requests for advisory opinions, and I'll have the board formally rule on this stuff, and that'll be where you need to go. And then if you want to change the rules to accommodate something else that the AOTA may be recommending is allowed, that's fine with me. But again, I think that we can only advise based upon the current rules and law. And it really, I understand that other people may be doing other things and other states may be doing it differently. But nonetheless, it's Louisiana laws, it's Louisiana rules. And our job is to enforce the Louisiana laws and rules and then recommend changes when we see that they're appropriate to be changed.
I do think a simple statement in the rules would be sufficient as far as that the OTA can participate in all aspects of the OT process with, documented service competency and in collaboration with, it could be stated to participate.
Okay, that's going to take a rule change.
Right.
Okay, and before I undertake a rule change for a single page, I'd like to get a whole bunch of other stuff handled as part of it. If you need something in immediate for an opinion, and if you think any of these questions require an immediate response or an advisory opinion, we can do those both, either one of those.
Mm-hmm.
Advisory opinions have the weight of regulatory weight behind them, but they're not rules and they're not the law.
Mm-hmm.
They're to tell people how to act in questions or areas of the rules and law, which is what you're proposing here.
Mm-hmm.
But again, the board may say, no, we don't want that. Okay, but I can't tell you what the board's going to say. I can only tell you the process to change what the rules say or how to affect the proper response to the question if it's needed to be answered urgently before the rule process can take effect. Because, if just to give you an idea, to start a change, to just add that simple statement that you referred to, if that's all we were going to do, it would take about 6 to 7 months. If I'm going to dedicate 6 to 7 months of time to changing the rules, I'd like to do a lot more than just that one statement.
Mm-hmm.
However, I can turn that one statement, if the board agrees, into an advisory
reboot it.
opinion that would say they could do it.
In the middle of my meeting.
So you tell me what you think, Kelly.
I have a question.
Sure.
And so what she has up there, and it says program implementation. Could we loosely interpret that? Because it says based on what the occupational therapist, has done, then instead of, because it doesn't say intervention implementation, it says program. So could program mean performing those components of assessments and discharge and, you know.
If you
by
want to
leaving it
change the
more-
rules, yes, we can change the rules. If you want an interpretation that says that, it would have to come as an advisory opinion from the board, which I can
Okay.
probably do in a month or two. But
Yeah, I have
again,
to
I'm
ask the
not, I'm
question.
seeing this stuff for the first time, okay? I'm concerned that you all are getting caught in these questions when they really need to be answered by the board, okay? And I'm trying to keep the advisory committee out of the line of fire because I see that the school board has done that, okay? There's a very active person at the state school board, and we've told her no on a couple of these issues, and these questions are coming back to you. And I find that that's distressing because y'all don't need to be in that position. We have to protect you from that.
I mean, I haven't personally gotten any questions from the school board. That's just from my own experience of working in the school system that those questions came up to me about the referral. But no one has contacted me from the board.
Okay.
Personally. I don't know about Amy or anybody else, but well, one of the reasons, Michelle, is that why it sounds confusing is because there is a section for evaluation, program planning, and then implementation. So like that's a step. And then it says, boom, here's the OTA. So that's why,
Okay.
you know, I've read other states and there was just, you know, one little statement that helped open that up or even change to OT practitioner, use that verbiage instead of just OT that helped. But, you know.
So it kind of sounds like the suggestion would be if you guys wrote up what the questions are to ask the advice of the board. And so what you have written there is good. Maybe just kind of read back through it or something and just determine if maybe that's something we want to send all those questions off to Dr. Van and request the board's opinion on that and how they look at it, along with the lawyers and all that kind of stuff. I think that's probably and maybe there is a rule change in there once we get the information back from them, but I think we're kind of at a sort of standstill with some of the questions. There's just not we need an opinion further up than us kind of deal. So that's kind of what it sounds like for all of it. Okay. So, I guess we would need to motion for Dr. Van, do we need to motion for Kelly to send this to you or just
Well,
that?
I'm going to say this to you. I need it no matter what. Okay. All I'm asking is don't just drop this on me at the meeting. Send it to me in advance so I can prepare better for you all.
Definitely. We will do that. We'll get it to you. All right. So we'll make sure that gets sent to Dr. Van today or later today. and then there we go. Okay. All right. So was there anything else, Kelly? I don't want to interrupt you.
Dr. Vandy, would you also like any other information that we have from AOTA or our opinion, or do you just want just the questions?
Send me the document you were showing on the screen.
Okay.
And any supporting documents, whether it's from the Texas laws you were showing earlier, AOTA, that might help us give the proper interpretation or stimulate a rule change.
Okay. And you need this today?
Well, let me say this to you. I promise you I'm not going to work on it till after Monday's meeting, but I need it before you have another meeting. That's for sure.
Can I do it Monday?
That's fine with me. I won't even be in the office Monday.
She wants her weekend, Dr. Van. It sounds like.
I'm going out of town today. I just wondered.
Have a good trip. I'll be driving to Monroe Sunday for the meeting Monday.
Okay, so so we are moving on to our 5th agenda item, which is an announcement of the OTAC seats that were approved by the board. So the incumbent Brenda Martin has been approved, and Kelly Brandon, Kim Solari, and Ingrid Frank. And then we have 2 new ones that would be taking the place or our seat, mine as well as Leslie's, is Raylena Crooks, and I apologize if I am butchering a name here. And the other one is Amy Laravere. So that's going to be our new OTAC seats that have been approved by the board. And they should be here for what would be the March meeting. Hopefully that all works out for them to be here. So that is it for the announcement of the OTAC seats. And the last one brings me to our last agenda item is to determine the 2022 dates for the OTAC meeting. I went through Jacinta to look at the dates available for Dr. Van, because we most assuredly want him here. So in March, we have March 4th or 11th. If it's okay with you, I would like to choose March 4th for you guys. June, we have the 17th and 24th, again, the 17th of June. September, there's the 16th and the 23rd. And if it's okay with y'all, I'm going to choose September 16th. Then we have December, which is either the 2nd or the 9th. And if it's okay with y'all, we'll choose the 2nd. So does anybody have any objections to the dates that we are choosing for you guys? March 4th, June 17th, September 16th, and December 2nd. All right, so there we go for 2022 dates. That is
Amy.
it for, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. Can you send me in writing the names of the two new members so that I can
Yes.
not
Get
put,
the
yeah.
names spelled right?
Yeah.
Yes. I
Thank you. I
understand.
appreciate that.
Absolutely, absolutely. So before we adjourn, I just would like to say this is mine and Leslie's last meeting, of course, and I just want to thank you guys for an amazing journey. This has been so wonderful, a very huge learning curve for us. I mean, we really we couldn't have done it without Dr. Van's help and assistance, and we just are so grateful that you are very involved, executive director for OTAC. I think it is to the, for wonderful for occupational therapy, as well as obviously the consumer that we are trying to protect here. And I just, from the bottom of my heart, just want to say thank you for the opportunity. And we wish, or I guess I'm speaking for myself, but I hope for Leslie too, but I wish Darby wonderful luck. I know she will do beautifully for you guys as the chairperson for the coming up years. And again, just a huge thanks.
Yes, thank you. And thank you for all you've done, Amy. It's been a really, 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 really major transition. It seems like since you and I first actually, were newbies on the committee to now. And really just to echo what Amy said, Dr. Van, it is huge having you a part of this, because I feel like we've done so much more since Dr. Van has been part of it than we ever did in the meetings prior to that. So having you and your input has been a tremendous value to the practice of OT and what we've been able to do with the advisory committee at this point. So thank you for all of your support, and thank you, Amy, for all that you've done too. So good luck, everyone, and happy holidays.
Well, I can't let everybody get going without saying the following. Number one, when I was first here, it was comforting to see Leslie because I happened to be a colleague of her dad's. As I embarked on this new journey, it was wonderful to work with Amy and Leslie. And quite frankly, they say I taught them, but I think you all taught me, and all this committee has taught me. So I think we've taught each other. And I think that's the mark of where we need to be in true evolution of this area of the board. And I think we are all seeing the need for us to evolve. And I am always willing to do the hard work of helping us evolve to be better if we do it in a way that protects the citizens. And so I can't thank all of you enough, but especially you, Amy, and you, Leslie, for welcoming me when I first came and teaching me what I needed to know and always being there when I needed a question answered. So I can't thank you all enough. I wish you the best of luck. And I will continue to try and do the best I can with this committee, for this board, as long as they let me.
We know you will.
Thank you. Yeah, no, you will.
Well,
So we are adjourned.
Yes, we are
No.
adjourned as of 12:55.
And I will
Thank
take care of these
you.
minutes
Thanks,
for
lady.
Darby.
Thank you both so
you.
much for everything, and just know that your phone will probably be ringing.
No problem.
Anytime,
No problem.
anytime. All right, guys. Merry
Absolutely.
Christmas.
Merry Christmas to
Thank you,
everybody.
guys.
Thank you,